Chapter 1476. The token was engraved with an ancient character U in bird seal script. There was nothing special about it in his hand, but the young man with golden cicada showed a strange expression. He smiled and said nothing. Goodbye. The old man turned around and stepped into the depths of the bright light and shadow of the innocent lamp. This is an ancestor of the U family, an imperial family on the starry sky ancient path. His temperament is the most aloof and cold. He is a good friend of the emperor of innumerable tribulations. If one day you're in trouble on the starry sky ancient path, you can take out this token. The young man with golden cicada couldn't help reminding Lin's son, an imperial family, and it was from a starry sky ancient path. Lin's son narrowed his eyes and put away the token. Whoosh! The white-boned fairy phoenix flew and turned into a beautiful woman with her hair tied up in a bun. She looked holy and aloof. However, she bowed slightly and said to Lin's son and the young man in golden robe, "Thank you for your help. This is a feather of my clan. Please accept it." Whoosh! A piece of colorful and illusory feather appeared in the woman's palm. She handed it to Lin's son. Lin's son looked at the young man with golden cicada, who said with a smile, "You helped them get out of trouble. It's natural for them to repay you." Lin's son put away the priceless feather of the immortal phoenix and said, "Thank you." It didn't take long for the woman to leave. You can probably tell that this woman comes from the bloodline of the immortal phoenix. In her clan, her seniority isn't considered high, but her cultivation base and foundation are second to none. Unfortunately, if she wasn't trapped in this place by that forbidden power, with her talent, it shouldn't be difficult for her to step into the martial emperor realm. The young man with golden cicada sighed. Next, the white-boned giant with a broken sword on his back turned into a bearded man from the Giant K clan. He gave Lin's son a 7-inch cyan scabbard. The scorched tree turned into a beautiful woman with a hairpin and plain clothes. She was a Tao tree of fire. She gave Lin's son a fiery red leaf. The white-boned fox turned into a cyan fox with 8 tails. Her face was soft and charming. She came from the 9 Orifices fox clan and gave Lin's son a string of glittering sapphire bells. White-boned snake turned into a middle-aged man with a ferocious face and a gloomy aura. He came from the dark-winged snake clan and gave Lin's son a snow-white tusk. White-boned turtle turned into an honest, short old man from the great void dragon turtle clan. He gave Lin's son a white shell the size of a baby's palm. In the process, they thanked Lin's son and the golden cicada youth one after another, and then walked into the bright light of the no-blame lamp one by one and disappeared. The young man with golden cicada stood beside him and introduced them to Lin from time to time. It was not until then that Lin's son realized that almost none of the 7 horrible monsters following him along the way was simple. For example, the elder of the U clan was a martial emperor in name only. The others were also terrifying big shots from various clans. All those years ago, they protected the myriad tribulations emperor in the origin of chaos. However, they've been implicated and suppressed by the forbidden energy. Their cultivations have been damaged, and that was why they become like this. The appearance of the no-blame lamp helped them resolve the suppression of the forbidden power and free themselves from the great abyss of innumerable tribulations. To them, the lamp of no blame was a hope that would allow them to return where they came from. Otherwise, they whose bodies have been destroyed by the forbidden power could only be lost in the world like wandering ghosts. They would be neither human nor ghost, unable to awaken their consciousnesses. Take good care of the things they gave you. They will be useful in the future. The young man with golden cicada said and returned the no-blame lamp to Lin's son. The most important thing is to protect this lamp. It's the painstaking effort of a great emperor. Lin's son thought of the skeleton boatman on the Styx River. Was that also an Emperor Realm expert? He put away the no-blame lamp carefully. He'd completely witnessed the miraculousness of this lamp, and he was very clearly aware of what sort of miraculous treasure it was. Let's go and have a look. The young man with golden cicada took the lead and stepped on the stone steps. Lin's son followed closely. There were 9,000 999 steps. As soon as he stepped on it, Lin Sun felt a strange vibration force spreading, which made his body tremble. Clatter, he silently circulated his body refinement cultivation, and only then was he able to resolve this strange vibrating force. The young man with golden cicada walked leisurely, as if he was walking on the ground. Lin Sun withdrew his gaze and continued to follow. As he took a step, the higher he went, the stronger the strange, vibrating power became. At the beginning, it was like a murmur. Although there was vibration force, it didn't affect Lin Sun at all. But soon, this trickle gradually turned into a surging wave, and the vibration force began to become stronger and stronger. Later on, the wave started to become turbulent, and it was as if a small stream had transformed into a great river. The raging waves beat against the shore, and the current was rapid and incomparably ferocious. But Lin Sun still couldn't do anything. In the process of climbing the steps, he just ran his body refining cultivation to become stronger and stronger, and then he resolved the vibration force. However, when he set foot on the 1,000 stone step, Lin Sun's expression became a little dignified. When he stepped forward, he seemed to be going against the rolling torrent. The terrible shock force oppressed him as if thousands of troops and horses were charging at the enemy line. The young man with golden cicada, walking in front of him, didn't look back, as if he was unaware of Lin's situation behind him. He looked very leisurely and calm, and his pace was very stable from beginning to end. Lin Sun took a deep breath and ran his body refining power to about 50%, so that he could keep up with the pace of the young man with golden cicada. When he set foot on the 2,000th step, Lin Sun's blood and chi seemed to be boiling and surging, and his whole body was bathed in the 9 pure Tao light. At this time, he had run his body refining power to the extreme to resolve and offset the vibration force spreading on the stone steps. Lin Sun couldn't help feeling shocked. It should be known that he had reached the fulfillment of the 8th retribution of longevity in body refining, and he was a real top king. But he had to go all out when he just set foot on the 2,000th step, and there were still 7,999 steps in front of him. The meaning of this number was enough to make any strong man desperate. Even Lin Sun's expression was extremely solemn. In front of him, the young man with golden cicada was barefoot and dressed in linen, with a leisurely manner. He didn't intend to stop and wait for Lin Sun. Whoosh, Lin Sun took a deep breath, got rid of distractions, and continued to move forward. In the following time, he even had to run the Fury of Yazi. Later, when the Fury of Yazi was not enough, he ran the Fighting Saint method. When he set foot on the 300 stone step, Lin Sun had already exerted the full strength of the art of permanence and leakage. He seemed to be fighting with all his strength, and the sound of Tao was extremely dazzling. At this moment, Lin Sun finally felt tired. If it was in ordinary times, he wouldn't feel so difficult even if he met a fake sage. But now, he was just climbing the steps. "Do you want to take a break?" At this moment, the young man with golden cicada stopped and asked Lin Sun in a gentle voice. "No need." Lin Sun shook his head. The young man with golden cicada didn't insist and continued to move forward. Lin Sun gritted his teeth and followed step by step. Boom, boom, boom. The terrible shock force, like a landslide and a tsunami, smashed at Lin Sun. There was no way to hide or avoid it. If he wanted to move forward, he had to face it head on. By the time he set foot on the 3,300th step, Lin Sun was already panting, with cold sweat on his forehead, and every inch of his muscles was trembling. But he didn't stop. The confrontation along the way aroused a fierce spirit in Lin Sun's heart. The most important thing was that the young man with golden cicada never stopped. Lin Sun didn't want to be left far behind by this guy. Even if he knew that his cultivation was far inferior to the young man, Lin Sun didn't think that his future achievements would be inferior to the young man. However, Lin Sun didn't know that as early as he set foot on the 3,000th step, the young man with golden cicada walking in front of him showed a trace of surprise. It seemed that he didn't expect that Lin Sun could go so far. Until Lin Sun set foot on the 3,300th step by step, The young man with golden cicada seemed to be very surprised, with a strange look in his eyes. He knew very well how incredible it was to be able to go to this step on the Taoist ladder, arranged by the Emperor Realm on the way to immortality. Even for the top figures, it was rare for them to come this far like Lin Sun. The young man with golden cicada smiled silently and didn't say anything more. He continued to move forward, as if he wanted to see how long Lin Sun could hold on. When he reached the 3,500th step, Lin Sun seemed to be carrying a holy mountain on his back, and his handsome face showed an extremely strenuous look. When he stepped on the 3,600th step, Lin Sun's face was distorted because of the strenuous effort, and the blue veins on his forehead stood out. When he stepped on the 3,700th step, his body shook with every step he took, as if he was about to collapse. When Lin Sun stepped on the 3,900th step, the young man with golden cicada stopped for the first time and said, "Do you want to take a break? You are on the verge of exhaustion. If you go on like this, you will hurt yourself and damage your cultivation." His voice was serious. After thinking for a while, he said, "You don't have to be so stubborn. It's already an incredible feat for you to be able to make it this far. In the past, I've never seen a peerless figure who could perform as well as you in this realm." At the end of his words, he turned his head and looked at Lin Sun. At this time, it's better to stop before going too far. Lin Sun was silent for a while, and then shook his head. "No need." The young man with golden cicada was stunned. "You only practice body refining all the way. Isn't it to sharpen your physique? Now it's enough. If you continue to sharpen it, it's as bad as not doing enough." Lin Sun smiled and took a sudden step up to the next stone step. Then, like a dry riverbed ushering in a rainstorm, Lin Sun's aura began to rise steadily, becoming stronger and more blazing. The young man with golden cicada suddenly smiled with a strange look in his eyes. "I see." Chapter 1477. He had broken through the realm. The young man with golden cicada's eyesight could tell that Lin Sun's cultivation had entered the 9th retribution realm from the 8th retribution realm. One step, and he had broken through the realm. Boom! Around Lin Sun, the 9 pure lights flowed, sweeping away the discomfort and fatigue in his body. He was in high spirits, and his aura was strong. The young man with golden cicada smiled and sighed, then turned around and continued to move forward. Behind him, Lin Sun also smiled and followed him. The 5,000th step, the 6,000th step, the 7,000th step. Along the way, Lin Sun's mentality had completely changed. His cultivation of the 9th retribution realm had been constantly tempered by the repeated confrontations. This was in fact a huge gain. The most taboo for a newly promoted cultivation was the instability of the realm and the shaking of the foundation. The confrontation on the stone steps was like a whetstone, which not only stabilized Lin Sun's realm, but also mastered the transformed power of body, refining in the shortest time to the point that he could use it freely. For those big shots, the great opportunity in the hall is a must fight for the opportunity to become an emperor, but for me, the training in front of me is actually an opportunity. Lin Sun came to a realization. Indeed, he couldn't get that great opportunity, but at the same time, there was a suitable opportunity for him in front of the Emperor Palace of 10,000 tribulations. But soon, Lin Sun had no time to think about it. When he set foot on the 7,600th step, he felt the signs of difficulty again. Moreover, the power of the body refining had been consumed again in the previous confrontation and was about to be exhausted. This time, Lin Sun didn't insist. He quietly ran his qi refining cultivation, and his pace became steady again. Along the way, the young man with golden cicada didn't make a sound. Lin Sun didn't say anything more. He devoted himself to fighting against the increasingly terrifying vibration force. The higher he went, the more terrifying the vibration force was. Even if he ran his qi refining cultivation, it was still very difficult for Lin Sun. It was like at the beginning, his opponents were just ordinary people, and the higher he went, the stronger the opponents he met. Until now, he even felt that he was fighting against a group of fake sages. The pressure doubled. Without any hesitation, when he stepped onto the 8,200th step, he circulated his soul refinement cultivation to its fullest. However, in just 10 minutes, Lin Sun felt strenuous again. There were 9,990 steps in total. The higher he went, the stronger the shock was. Especially when he stepped on the 9,000th step, Lin Sun's body shook, and he was almost shaken back. He gritted his teeth and prepared himself for battle with all his might. In the following time, Lin Sun's expression became more and more serious, and his steps became heavier and heavier. His whole body was like a burning furnace of chaos, shining to the extreme. 9,100, 9,200, 9,300. In the end, his entire body was trembling while his bones emitted sounds of being unable to endure the heavy load. Moreover, the veins on his face had bulged up and warped. It was too difficult. This was more difficult than any battle Lin Sun had ever encountered, and his will was under unprecedented pressure. In fact, from the moment he set foot on the 9,000th step, the golden cicada youth had been ready to give Lin a hand when he couldn't hold on any longer. But up to now, Lin Sun had already set foot on the 9,700th step, and he still persisted. Every time he took a step, his body was shaking like a candle in the wind, which would fall down and go out at any time. However, he miraculously persevered every single time. His hurried breathing was like a bellows being pulled. Sweat flowed out of his body like a stream, and his face was already pale. Many times, the golden cicada youth wanted to say something, but stopped on second thought. He almost couldn't help but help Lin Sun several times. But in the end, he didn't do so. Lin Sun was still persisting. Why should he give up at this time? The golden cicada youth suddenly thought of Calamity Emperor. In those days, Calamity Emperor went against the heaven and became an emperor after thousands of tribulations. How could he do it without great perseverance and willpower? But Lin Sun in front of him, at least in perseverance and willpower, was not inferior to Calamity Emperor at all, and even surpassed him. In ancient times, those who made great achievements not only had extraordinary talent, but also had indomitable will. Fangsuan Mountain has added a great successor. The golden cicada youth sighed with emotion. Very embarrassed. Unprecedentedly embarrassed. For the first time since returning to the mortal world, Lin Sun almost couldn't hold on. This was not a battle, but it was more torturous and difficult than a battle. In the end, Lin Sun's body was numb, and his consciousness was blank. He supported himself with his unyielding willpower. All thoughts were gone. The sky, the earth, and the man, everything was empty. Moving forward had become an eternal instinct. The origin spirit vein in his chest had become boiling hot. It was like a blazing sun that was burning in his body, emitting dazzling and strange fluctuations. The original spiritual vein was trembling and buzzing, like a seed buried in the ground, showing signs of bursting out. Lin Sun didn't notice all this. The 9,900th step. The 9,990th step. Arriving here, the golden cicada youth was shocked. He hadn't had this kind of emotion for a long time. But at this time, he was touched by Lin Sun. With his knowledge and wisdom, he could infer most things in the world. But this time, even he didn't expect that Lin Sun could hold on until now. This was an accident. Accidents often shock people. The golden cicada youth couldn't even remember when was the last time something like this had happened, and what had shocked and surprised him. Therefore, his mood was a little unsettled at this moment. I have been dormant and meditated for countless years. Now I am about to leave, but I got such an accident. This young man is really a variable. There is a trace of surprise between the golden cicada youth's eyebrows. There were 50 Tao and 49 heavenly evolutions, but one escaped. Fangsuan Mountain hadn't chosen a disciple for many years, but in this life, it chose this young man, and the number of its disciples was 55. In this way, could it be that there was some sort of secret hidden in the darkness? What was more, it happened to be a great era, and the great era was full of variables. When a young man, like a variable, sought Tao in this great era where everything was possible, what kind of path could he take? At this moment, the golden cicada youth couldn't help but have an impulse to stay and see Lin Sun's future. But in the end, he held back, because if he didn't leave this time, there would be no chance in the future. As he was thinking, he heard a flop. The golden cicada youth turned his head and saw Lin Sun take a step forward and fall down on the 9,999th step. This was the gate of the Emperor Palace of 10 tribulations. No matter how many nines there were, they would all return to one in the end. And among the 50 Tao, one escaped from the number of heavenly evolutions. At this moment, Lin Sun seemed to be sitting there miserably, but in the eyes of the golden cicada youth, he couldn't hide his surprise. Surprise, surprise. Strange, strange. The appearance of the golden cicada youth at this moment was like watching a miraculous accident, which puzzled him and made him feel an indescribable joy. After a long time, he gradually calmed down and said to himself, "Interesting, it turns out that I haven't seen through him before. It's rare. It's really rare." At this time, Lin Sun, who was sitting on the ground, didn't completely relax, nor did he fall asleep because of excessive fatigue and weakness. He didn't know where the strength came from. He gritted his teeth, moved his numb body with difficulty, and sat down cross-legged little by little. Then he slowly closed his eyes. It was obvious that his face was pale and tired, but at this moment, he looked solemn and impressive. Chapter 1478. The golden cicada youth stared at Lin Sun. In the depths of his eyes, which were as clear as a baby's, infinite mysterious light was reflected, which seemed to be able to see through everything. But in merely a few breaths of time, he withdrew his gaze and revealed a startled expression. He could see that Lin Sun's cultivation had gained immeasurable benefits after being tempered by the power of 9,999 stone steps. He also saw that although Lin Sun's strength was exhausted at the moment, he had awakened the talent in his bloodline under extreme tempering. But even he couldn't detect the aura of that kind of innate divine ability. This could only prove that the power of the talent awakened by Lin Sun was extraordinary. This was the reason why the golden cicada youth was stunned. The swallowing abyss. The talent mastered by the fierce guy named Xing and was the star submerging skill. With one strike, he could destroy the stars and the moon and annihilate the vitality. It was extremely powerful. There was a trace of reminiscence in the eyes of the golden cicada youth. However, the talent awakened by Lin Sun seems to be completely different from that of Xing, and it's interesting that the talent awakened by the same bloodline power is different. This kind of bloodline power is very rare. When the golden cicada youth was meditating, a strange and blazing wave appeared on Lin Sun, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground. His originally blank consciousness suddenly felt as if he was wandering in a vast and long river, the waves rolling and surging endlessly. As for his consciousness, it drifted along with the waves. He saw many incredible scenes. Time passed, the 4 seasons changed, the longitude and latitude evolved, the rise and fall of history. All living beings experienced birth, old age, sickness, and death. The world experienced vicissitudes of life. Mountains and rivers were destroyed and reborn in an orderly manner. In a trance, spring and autumn had passed. In a snap of fingers, a light year passed. It was as if he had experienced a bizarre and dazzling journey through the years. Boom! Immediately, everything burst into pieces. A corner of the vast river was swallowed by a big abyss, which suddenly produced an indescribable scene of collapse and turbulence. At this moment, Lin Sun's body produced a kind of instinct. A stream of destiny dark force, originally sealed in his sea of consciousness, gushed out and poured into his heart. The destiny dark energy was one of the rewards obtained after passing the test in the heaven accessing place. It had a magical power to stimulate one's talent and awaken the original power. At this moment, this force was completely swallowed by Lin's spiritual vein. Then, in Lin Sun's consciousness, he saw a peerless scene. In a vast river, a wisp of the aura of time was swallowed by the abyss. Time, it was the supreme order of the heavens, It was a power that even Emperor Realm experts could only sigh at. At this moment, a wisp of the aura of time was left behind in a large abyss. Lin Sun felt a sharp pain in his consciousness. Everything he saw and felt was like broken glass, turning into fragments and disappearing. Boom! After that, his consciousness returned to his body, and his entire body suddenly started trembling. His apertures, skin, meridians, sea of consciousness, internal organs. Every single area of his body was filled with a strand of strange and surging, blazing energy. In the place of the heart vein, a section of the spiritual vein had undergone a complete transformation. It was as illusory as a touch of light, in which a strange Taoist pattern was floating. This Tao marking was too unique. It was shaped like a feather, and it was jade white and dazzling. It was suffused with strands of a mysterious and obscure aura, and it faintly seemed as if the marks of time were flowing within the Tao marking and flickered indeterminately. Forbidden death. Lin Sun came to a realization. This was the talent that he had awakened. As the name suggested, it was to confine the power that passed away. However, he couldn't calm down, because the power confined by forbidden death was too shocking, too appalling, and too incredible. Confine time in an instant. This was the greatest power of the talent, forbidden death. Only when one reached the Saint Realm could he master the mystery of space and have the means of space shifting. But even Emperor Realm experts couldn't touch or resist the law of time. No matter Emperor Realm experts or ants, once they died, they were destined to be eroded by the power of time and then erased. Emperor Realm experts wanted to be immortal, but the biggest threat they faced was time. The power of forbidden death could confine the passage of time for a moment. This power was so horrible that Lin Sun couldn't believe it. After a long time, he calmed down a little and sensed it carefully. It was an illusory white and magnificent strange Taoist pattern like a flying feather, obscure and mysterious. But when Lin Sun tried to sense it, he felt that he had entered into a vast and unfathomable abyss. Apart from this, he got nothing. Lin Sun was stunned and laughed at himself in his heart. Even he couldn't feel the mystery of his talent. This was really strange. But after thinking about it, Lin Sun felt relieved. The time-forbidding divine power could confine time for an instant, and it involved the law of time. Even martial emperors might not be able to understand its mysteries. He had yet to become a martial saint, and was far from being a martial emperor. So how could he understand the secrets of the law of time? It could only be said that forbidden death was an innate method, a kind of power that could be used and controlled. Its essence was not something that Lin Sun could touch and control at the moment. Even so, Lin Sun felt a burst of heat in his heart. How could he not understand the power of forbidden death? Although it could only confine time for a moment, this moment was enough to change too many things. In a battle, the outcome and life and death could be determined in a moment. Before long, Lin Sun opened his eyes. "You're awake." Beside him, the young man with golden cicada said. When Lin Sun was about to get up, he felt so tired and exhausted that he couldn't even lift a finger. In the end, he only showed a wry smile. The young man with golden cicada seemed to understand and patted Lin Sun on the shoulder. Suddenly, a strong and pure force poured into Lin Sun's body like a river. In just a few breaths, Lin Sun's fatigue was swept away, and his cultivation was restored to its original state. Lin Sun was stunned. He knew that the young man with golden cicada was an unfathomable existence, but he didn't expect that his means were so powerful. The young man with golden cicada smiled and said, "Don't you understand why I didn't give you a hand when you climbed the stone steps before?" Lin Sun got up and said, "Now I understand. It's for practice." The young man with golden cicada laughed heartily and said, "Yes, this is the pursuit of Tao. When you can walk on your own, the most taboo is to be pulled by others. It's harmful." At this time, standing in front of the gate of the Emperor Palace of 10,000 Tribulations, Lin Sun felt like standing in the sky. In front of him were layers of stone steps that extended down, and the field of vision was extremely vast. Behind him, the gate of the Emperor Palace had been opened, with vast light diffusing out, which looked extremely mysterious. Let's go. Judging from the time, the outcome of this battle for the great opportunity is about to be decided. The young man with golden cicada turned around and walked towards the gate of the Emperor Palace. From beginning to end, he didn't ask about Lin Sun's talent. Lin Sun was stunned, but he didn't say much and followed him in. The Emperor Palace, in Lin Sun's expectation, must be magical and full of mystery, with a scene that was enough to make any practitioner marvel in awe. But to Lin Sun's surprise, the Emperor Palace was empty, with only a desk and a futon. The old color of the desk was made of the most common pear wood, and the futon was also made of the most common cattail leaves. These two items could be seen everywhere in ordinary people's homes. Now, they were displayed in the Emperor Palace of 10,000 tribulations. In this way, these seemingly ordinary things were very unusual. An ordinary rock, if a saint sits on it to comprehend the Tao, after being immersed in the saint's aura for many years, this rock is destined to become different. If the later generations study it, they might even be able to pry into some of the mysteries of the divine Tao. For example, this table and meditation cushion were prepared by the myriad tribulations Emperor's mother for him when he was young, and they accompanied him throughout his youth. Later on, when he attained the Tao, he always carried them with him, and he took them to be the most important things in his life. Even when he perished, he couldn't bear to see them destroyed along with him. The young man with golden cicada sighed with emotion. No matter how ordinary the desk and futon are, they're no longer ordinary when accompanied by a great emperor seeking Tao. Lin Sun was moved and shocked. This desk and futon might not be earth-shattering treasures, but they were branded with the complete experience of a great emperor. Of course, other treasures couldn't compare with them. You better not try to sense these two items. The young man with golden cicada reminded, no one can resist the power in it except for those in the emperor realm. Lin Sun was shocked and immediately asked, "What's the origin of that bowl?" A rough ceramic bowl stood alone on the table. It was pitch black and seemed to be very ordinary. "Come with me." The young man with golden cicada walked to the desk, looked down at the ceramic bowl, and said, "Look, those strong people who are fighting for the great opportunity are all in it." "What?" Lin Sun's eyes narrowed, and he hurriedly stepped forward. He looked down and saw that the ceramic bowl was filled with chaotic air. It seemed to contain a vast world. This ceramic bowl was only the size of a palm, but the bottom of the bowl carried a universe. This made Lin Sun stunned. One flower, one world, one leaf, one Bodhi. Even a grain of sand can contain a universe. The young man with golden cicada said, "This is the means of the emperor realm, making something out of nothing." Lin Sun blurted out. The young man with golden cicada was stunned, which was rare for him. He looked up at Lin Sun and said, "Do you also know this realm?" Lin Sun shook his head. "It's just a glimpse." The young man with golden cicada sighed and looked away. In fact, he was a little uneasy in his heart. The realm of making something out of nothing was a realm that even many emperors couldn't see. But now, it was seen by a young man who hadn't become a saint. This almost subverted the young man's cognition. This is not making something out of nothing. It's just a means of putting a mountain in a mustard seed. It's the extreme use of the law of space. The young man with golden cicada said, and looked at the black ceramic bowl again. P.S. Golden Fish is going abroad today, and many riders of Zhongheng are with her. As for the update, Golden Fish pretentiously said, "You can see how many riders don't update and how many riders don't update." But Golden Fish could guarantee that before the 17th, there would be 2 updates a day. Golden Fish also brought a computer to go abroad. She would try to update on the 19th and 20th. He also hoped that when the children read, they wouldn't forget to cast their monthly votes to support Goldfish, who was so diligent and never forgot to type. Chapter 1479. The world in the bowl was very strange, divided into 9,999 secret realms. Each secret realm presented a different scene. Wind, thunder, earth, fire, metal, wood, swamp. Different scenes of the great Tao filled each secret realm, evolving into mountains, rivers, plants, the sun, the moon, and the stars. At a glance, Lin soon saw that this world was like the steps in front of the gate of the Emperor of 10,000 Tribulations. The 9,999 secret realms were superimposed in the world in the bowl, looking very unique. This bowl is called Heaven of 10,000 Tribulations, and the world in the bowl is called Purgatory of 10,000 Tribulations, which is divided into 9,999 levels. The golden cicada youth explained, "This is the life weapon of the Emperor of 10,000 Tribulations, which once accompanied the Emperor to conquer the 9 heavens and 10 earths. However, now this bowl has become the birthplace of a great opportunity." Soon, Lin Sun saw many figures. There were Wu Jiuqiong and others of the voodoo barbarian Jin Yuan, Go Tianxing and others of the alliance of 10,000 races. There were also terrifying creatures living in the mulberry forest, such as the 1,000-feather sword flower, blood lotus ancestor, blood-colored moths, green flood dragons, bronze ants, and so on. Zhao Yuanji and the others were also among them. However, the fierce battle Lin Sun expected did not happen. These important figures of the Quasi-Emperor realm were almost distributed in different secret realms, just like in different interfaces. Zhao Tailai, the Empress, and the Dean of Green Deer School were located in the secret realms closest to the bottom. Further up were the Voodoo Barbarian Camp, the alliance of 10,000 races, and those terrifying creatures. And Zhao Yuanji was now in the lead, standing in the upper area of many secret realms. Every secret realm in the purgatory of 10,000 tribulations is full of a tribulation, just like a purgatory. The way to seize this great opportunity is very simple. Dissolve the tribulation, break the purgatory, and go up layer by layer. The golden cicada youth smiled. In fact, it's similar to climbing the stone steps just now, but only the Quasi-Emperor has the ability to resolve the tribulation in the purgatory of 10,000 tribulations. Lin Sun suddenly understood. He saw Zhao Tailai standing in the 1,300th secret realm, panting, looking very gloomy. And the tribulation he faced was a blue light rainstorm. The rain of azure light was gorgeous and beautiful, like a group of azure comets dancing in the sky. But it was this beautiful rain of light that caused Zhao Tailai to cover his head and flee like a rat. He dodged in a sorry state and cursed from time to time. Immediately, Lin Sun saw the 1,000-feather sword swaying, bursting out hundreds of millions of misty sword chi, and instantly smashed a towering mountain in front of him. After that, its figure flashed, and it arrived at an even higher secret realm. Lin Sun gasped in astonishment at the unparalleled fierceness of his posture. Before long, Lin Sun saw another Quasi-Emperor of Voodoo Barbarian branch, struck by a wisp of black lightning, fell to the ground, hair disheveled, and uttered an unwilling scream. Then, the Quasi-Emperor of Voodoo Barbarian branch disappeared instantly. If you fail to transcend the tribulation, you will lose the right to fight for this great opportunity. However, he won't die. Given the 1,000 tribulations Emperor's breadth of mind and boldness, he wouldn't go so far as to kill those Quasi-Emperors. Lin Sun finally understood it thoroughly. In this purgatory of 10,000 tribulations, every Quasi-Emperor had the opportunity to fight for the great opportunity, provided that they had to break through the purgatory-like secret realms. If they wanted to break through the secret realms, they must break through the tribulation distributed in the secret realms. If they were weak, they would be eliminated if they failed to transcend the tribulation. If they were strong, they could go up layer by layer. Lin Sun noticed that Zhao Tailai, the Empress, and the Dean of Green Deer School had been in the lowest secret realms of the purgatory of 10,000 tribulations because they were seriously injured before. According to this situation, it was doomed to be impossible for them to fight for this great opportunity. But Lin Sun also learned that they came here to help Zhao Yuanji fight for the opportunity. So even if they failed, they wouldn't care much. To Lin Sun's surprise, Zhao Yuanji was also seriously injured, but he was now far ahead of them and was now in the 9,900 secret realm. The strongest person closest to him was the childlike Blood Lotus ancestor, who was also more than 300 secret realms away from him. Closely behind Blood Lotus ancestor was the Blood Red Moth. However, in terms of the speed of transcending the tribulation, the Blood Red Moth was obviously a little better than Blood Lotus ancestor, and it was gradually narrowing the gap between them. The young man with golden cicada seemed to see through Lin Sun's doubts. Zhao Yuanji is the first one to be selected. As soon as he entered the purgatory of 10,000 tribulations, he was far ahead of the others and had all the advantages. After thinking for a while, the young man with golden cicada added, "However, Zhao Yuanji's advantage is diminishing. None of his opponents are ordinary. No wonder those old monsters didn't hesitate to besiege him at the beginning to kill him. His advantage is really too obvious." Lin Sun sighed with emotion. The young man with golden cicada laughed. "Do you think only the first one to break through all the secret realms of the purgatory of 10,000 tribulations can win this great opportunity?" Lin Sun was stunned. "Is there any other mystery?" The eyes of the young man with golden cicada were clear, and he said in a gentle voice, "To become an emperor, you can't break through power by force. You need a real, invincible willpower who is not afraid of all tribulations, not afraid of the past and the future, not constrained by the great way, and not regretting your own Taoist heart. If you think you can seize the opportunity by only relying on your strong combat power, you underestimate the difficulty of becoming an emperor." Lin Sun smiled bitterly. "It's really difficult for me to understand these things." He hadn't even become a saint, so it was naturally impossible for him to understand the difficulty of becoming an emperor. "It doesn't matter. You will understand it in the future." From beginning to end, the young man with golden cicada never laughed at or despised Lin Sun, nor did he show a superior or domineering attitude. He seemed very peaceful, like a gentle friend. From the outside of the palace of 10,000 tribulations to now, he had been chatting with Lin Sun. But Lin Sun knew that the so-called chatting was also a kind of guidance. Along the way, what the young man with golden cicada explained was like opening a door for Lin Sun, letting him see a higher, farther, and bigger world. At this moment, Lin Sun really felt that listening to the words of a wise man was better than reading books for 10 years. At this moment, the young man with golden cicada was stunned. He shook his head with a wry smile and said, "Bai really doesn't give up." Following his gaze, Lin Sun saw a girl in white breaking through the tribulation on the 8,990th floor of the secret realm. Her hair was black, and her eyebrows were as beautiful as a young girl's. Her whole body was flowing with spirit, but when she fought, she was extremely fierce and tyrannical. Those tribulations were simply nothing to her, and she dealt with them one by one. Her white clothes fluttered as she rose up into the sky, and she seemed like a peerless female, celestial of war. In just a moment, the girl had broken through more than 10 floors of the secret realm and set foot on the 9,000th floor of the secret realm. This shocked Lin Sun. Compared with the speed of Zhao Yuanji, Blood Lotus ancestor, the Blood Red Moth, and the girl in white. In an instant, he concluded that if it continued, not only the Blood Red Moth and Blood Lotus ancestor would be surpassed, but even Zhao Yuanji might be surpassed by the girl in white. "This is too fierce." Lin Sun smacked his lips. The young man with golden cicada shook his head. "That's because her foundation and talent occupy a great advantage. Well, she is Bai. But if you see her in the future, you can't call her like this, or she will go crazy." Lin Sun was stunned and thought to himself, how dare he call such a fierce and messy quasi-emperor Bai to his face? And this title indeed seemed to be very inconsistent with the identity of a quasi-emperor. It was just like the nickname of a cat or dog. Well, her name is Emperor Bai. She has been determined to be an emperor for a long time. The reason why she came here with me and was willing to stay dormant for so many years was to become an emperor. Speaking of this, the young man with golden cicada sighed softly. Originally, I wanted to help her, but unfortunately, even if this great opportunity is given to her, she is doomed to not get what she wants. Why is that? Lin Sun was curious. The young man with golden cicada didn't explain too much, but just said, "Her opportunity to become an emperor is not here." Lin Sun nodded and suddenly said, "She, is that white cicada?" The young man with golden cicada laughed and said, "Do you still remember the killing intent she showed to you when you first met her?" Lin Sun said frankly, no one can forget this kind of experience. At that time, he wanted to get close to the holy tree of ice and snow, but he felt a terrible killing intent from a white cicada. At that time, thanks to the help of the blood-colored moth, Lin Sun escaped the disaster unscathed. The young man with golden cicada said, "In fact, even if Phylan didn't help you at that time, the white cicada couldn't kill you. She just felt conflicted about your identity." Lin Sun was stunned. "What identity?" "The successor of Mount Mind," the young man with golden cicada said. Lin Sun was shocked. Only now did he realize that the young man with golden cicada had seen a lot of things about him when they first met. Does this emperor have a grudge against Mount Mind? Lin Sun couldn't help asking. The young man with golden cicada laughed. "She just suffered a loss in the hands of a successor of Mount Mind, so she has always been very unconvinced." "Who?" Lin Sun became more and more curious. In his view, the white cicada was already terrible enough, and the combat power it showed seemed to be more ferocious than that of the blood-red moth and ancestor blood lotus. But there was a successor of Mount Mind who made the white cicada suffer a loss, which was incredible. That person has practiced the saint method, just like you. The young man with golden cicada said casually. In an instant, Lin Sun thought of a stalwart figure full of unruly aura and overwhelming combat power. When he obtained the saint method at the top of Mount Mind, Lin Sun had also seen some strange phenomena. At that time, the arrogant figure knelt alone in front of the collapsed and dilapidated gate of Mount Mind, silent like a stubborn stone. Then, the arrogant figure rose to the sky and fought fiercely with the enemy who suddenly came to kill him. Like a god of war, his figure filled the world and illuminated eternity. Was it him? Chapter 1480. My young friend, do you know the origin of the Tao test? Suddenly, the young man with golden cicada looked at Lin Sun. Yes. Lin Sun nodded. He had heard from the mysterious woman that there were 3 kinds of tribulations in the ancient desolation realm after primitive times. The first one was the Tao-cutting tribulation for the sage realm. From then on, the sages could no longer break through and step into the emperor realm. The second one was the prohibition of trapping, which made the ancient desolation realm like a cage and trapped all the strong to explore the way of the outside world. The third one was the prohibition of trapping. From then on, the 3 paths of body refining, soul refining, and chi refining couldn't be practiced at the same time. Otherwise, they would die before becoming sages. Thinking of this, Lin Sun blurted out, "In this competition for the great opportunity, if someone wants to become an emperor, he will also have to go through the Tao-cutting tribulation." The young man with golden cicada smiled. "It seems that you know more than I thought." "Yes, whoever seizes this great opportunity will face the Tao-cutting tribulation when he becomes an emperor." After a pause, he continued, "However, you also know that now the great era is coming, and this is the origin of chaos. Even if the Tao-cutting tribulation comes, there's hope to solve it." "I see." Lin Sun understood. No wonder those quasi-emperors had been dormant in the lower world for so many years. They were not only waiting for the coming of the great era, but more importantly, they wanted to seize this great opportunity to break the Tao-cutting tribulation in the great era and become an emperor. At this time, Lin Sun fully realized how difficult it was to become an emperor. In order to wait for the great era, they had to stay dormant and endure the passage of time. In order to become an emperor, they had to face the threat of the Tao-cutting tribulation. Every single step seemed to be so difficult and so dangerous. In fact, there is one thing you don't understand. After this great opportunity, all the creatures who want to leave here will also face a tribulation. The young man with golden cicada said calmly, "That's the prohibition of trapping over the whole ancient desolation realm." Lin Sun was shocked. This great opportunity had actually gathered three types of forbidden tribulations that had only appeared after the primeval age. It seemed incredible, but after thinking about it carefully, it was the truth. He came here to break the prohibition of trapping. In order to become a martial monarch, those quasi-martial monarchs would definitely trigger the Tao severing tribulation. On the other hand, experts like the golden cicada young man who wanted to leave the source of chaos were bound to face the binding restriction. This is a great opportunity. Everyone has their own desires, and no one is able to escape the tribulation they will face. However, this tribulation gives everyone hope. Even though the myriad tribulation's great emperor died back then, he still spent a lot of effort to set up this trap. It can be said that he put a lot of thought into it. The golden cicada youth sighed with a hint of admiration. A great emperor who could look down on all the heavens was still seeking a great opportunity for the future generations before his death. How many people in the world could compare to such a breadth of mind and boldness? This was the true demeanor of an emperor. At this moment, Lin Sun couldn't help but admire him. At this moment, the young man turned to look at Lin Sun and said, "Little friend, you can take action now." Me? Lin Sun was stunned. Isn't it said that only martial artists in the quasi-emperor realm can enter the world of the heaven-transforming bowl? The tribulation has been resolved by those quasi-emperors. You'll be fine if you go there. The young man with the golden cicada smiled, and then reminded, the forbidden Tao tribulation is not a tribulation that you triggered yourself, but a calamity that targets cultivators. Such a tribulation is like a sinister enemy, and you alone are bound to be unable to resist it. Only when you enter the purgatory of 10,000 tribulations and face this tribulation will be triggered by the whole purgatory of 10,000 tribulations. At that time, other quasi-emperors distributed in the purgatory of 10,000 tribulations will inevitably share this tribulation with you. In this way, your chance of success will be much greater. After hearing this, Lin Sun looked strange. Isn't this tantamount to framing those old monsters? The golden cicada youth laughed. Why, you don't want to? Lin Sun couldn't help laughing, and then cupped his hands to salute. Senior, thank you for your guidance. The golden cicada youth said, go ahead. Put your consciousness into this bowl, and you can enter the purgatory of 10,000 tribulations. Now, the time is ripe. It will be a pity if you miss it. Lin Sun no longer hesitated and started to take action. Buzz, as soon as his consciousness touched the myriad tribulation heaven transformation bowl, his entire body suddenly vanished on the spot. 3 taboo tribulations in a trap set by the great emperor of 10,000 tribulations, plus this boy, is a variable. It can be said that there are many tribulations, and there are changes in the tribulations. The golden cicada youth's clear eyes glowed with wisdom, and he murmured in his heart, without this boy, I'm afraid this variable will not be so easily triggered. Thinking of this, the golden cicada youth smiled silently. The so-called fate is really wonderful. What magical place. Lin Sun showed a look of surprise. At this time, he stood in a sea of clouds. The sea of clouds was magnificent, covering the mountains and rivers between heaven and earth. The fog was constantly rolling and evaporating. In the sea of clouds, the breath was full of the taste of tribulation, as if it was everywhere. Standing here, Lin Sun keenly felt a kind of danger. Like a sudden impulse, it became difficult to breathe, and there was a feeling of fear in his mind, body, and even cultivation. It was as if a strange and terrifying power had already locked onto him from the unseen world. Lin Sun's expression became solemn. He knew that this was probably a sign that the forbidden Tao tribulation was coming. However, he was not afraid in his heart. After a month of enlightenment in front of the Taoist mountain, he attracted the 9th tribulation of longevity, and his cultivation of qi refining and body refining entered the 9th tribulation of longevity at one stroke. At the same time, the power of body refining with the help of thunder tribulation produced a transformation and reached the 8th tribulation of longevity. Not long ago, he had stepped on the 9,999 stone steps. After going through a series of tempering, his body tempering cultivation had already entered the longevity, ninth retribution realm. He had truly advanced side by side with his chi refinement and soul tempering cultivation. That was to say, his cultivation was only one big threshold away from becoming a sage. Therefore, the arrival of the forbidden Tao tribulation at this time was within Lin Sun's expectation, and he had made enough preparations for it. Suddenly, the sky suddenly darkened. Lin Sun looked up and saw that there was a strange crack in the sky. It was as if the curtain of the sky had been torn apart, revealing a boundlessly deep and bizarre pitch-black color. An oppressive and suffocating aura of the forbidden tribulation began to spread out from the crack in the sky. The world was dead silent, and the air seemed to be stagnant. Lin Sun's hair stood on end. His mind, soul, and body all had a fatal sense of cold danger in an instant. In the past, Lin Sun had gone through many tribulations and seen all kinds of peerless, strange, and abnormal tribulation thunder. But he had never seen such a strange and terrible tribulation power like the one in front of him. This reminded him of the power of cutting Tao sealed in the Bodhi wood, and the terrible taboo power that descended when Holy Monk Du Ji and Black Phoenix, Holy Empress, were killed. He also remembered that every time the mysterious woman appeared in the world, she would be targeted by this spear of cutting Tao. Then, Lin Sun was completely sure that the forbidden Tao tribulation, the restriction of trapping, and the tribulation of cutting Tao should be from the same source as the mysterious woman said. But the target was different, so the power should be different. At this time, Lin Sun found it difficult to breathe, and his whole body was stiff. The three kinds of Tao power that he cultivated simultaneously were all suppressed when running, and there was a slight feeling of sluggishness. This made Lin Sun look more and more serious. The forbidden Tao tribulation was really not simple. At the same time, the golden cicada youth in the imperial palace of 10,000 tribulations looked out of the gate of the imperial palace and saw a crack in the sky above the mulberry forest. The tribulation has come. Just wait for the variable to happen. A frightening light suddenly flashed in the eyes of the golden cicada youth. His linen clothes fluttered in the wind, and his expression was calm. And in different secret realms of the purgatory of 10,000 tribulations, strange taboo aura also appeared, which aroused the vigilance of many quasi-emperors. Has someone seized a great opportunity and ushered in the tribulation of cutting Tao before becoming an emperor? The face of the childlike blood lotus ancestor darkened, and he was extremely shocked and angry. How could this be? Zhao Yuanji was stunned and extremely surprised. Presently, he was standing at the 9,997th secret realm, and he wasn't far away from the last secret realm. Could it be that white cicada? He thought of the white-clothed girl who had leaped in front of him, and his heart sank. No, why can't it be me? The white cicada girl was also astonished at this moment. She was in the last secret realm, but she had not yet broken through. But she was already convinced that she would be the first person to break through the purgatory of 10,000 tribulations and seize this great opportunity. But now, something like this had actually happened. This caught her completely off guard. Damn it! It can't be. Why is this happening? At the same time, the expressions of the quasi-emperors who had not been eliminated in the other secret realms changed, and their hearts surged with indignation. For example, the 1,000-feather sword flower, Wu Jiucheng, Zhu Tianxing, the dark green flood dragon, and so on. Many people even roared loudly, unable to accept this reality. They had bitterly endured for so long, but in the end, it was all for naught. Even as quasi-emperors, they could not bear such a blow. Everyone, don't be alarmed. This is not the arrival of the tribulation of cutting Tao. Suddenly, the clear and gentle voice of the golden cicada youth resounded in the purgatory of 10,000 realms, and every quasi-emperor heard it clearly. Immediately, many quasi-emperors realized who the speaker was, and their expressions all relaxed. It was that golden cicada. What he said naturally cannot be false. And did this mean that this great opportunity had not been seized by anyone? Thinking of this, many people could not help but feel a glimmer of hope in their hearts. The anger, indignation, bitterness, and helplessness from before were swept away. Chapter 1481. Many quasi-emperors could not help but reveal a joyful and relaxed smile. In the face of the hope of becoming an emperor that they had been longing for countless years, no one could remain indifferent. It was precisely because they were too nervous and focused on it that their mood fluctuated greatly. I knew that you, golden cicada, would not leave me alone. A smile appeared on the young girl's picturesque face. She knew that as long as golden cicada helped her, this great opportunity would definitely be hers. It's not the Tao-cutting tribulation. Zhao Yuanji breathed a sigh of relief. Ha, that's great. Blood Lotus Ancestor laughed. However, there was still a trace of doubt in their hearts. Since it was not the Tao-cutting tribulation, why would there be such a taboo aura in this world? At this moment, the voice of the young man with golden cicada sounded again. However, this is indeed a great tribulation known as the Tao-cutting tribulation. It comes from a young friend, but it needs to be shared by all of you. I believe that with your noble character and unquestionable integrity, you will certainly be very happy to help the younger generation. Golden Cicada, thank you in advance. His words stunned all the quasi-emperors. The Tao-cutting tribulation? They all thought of one person at the same time, Lin Sun. All of a sudden, the faces of many quasi-emperors darkened. Share? This was clearly framing them and using their strength to help that boy overcome the tribulation. The faces of some quasi-emperors darkened at the thought of being inexplicably schemed against. Like Wu Jiucheng, Thousand Feather Sword Flower, and other old monsters who had been scolded by Lin Sun, they were so angry that their noses were smoking. Even some quasi-emperors who had never had a grudge against Lin Sun felt very uncomfortable. They had been schemed against by an ant who did not even take them seriously. This feeling was too disgusting and irritating. Zhao Yuanji, the Empress, Zhao Tailai, and the Dean of Green Deer School wore strange expressions. They did not expect that Lin Sun would do such a thing at this time. He actually wanted to use the hands of a group of quasi-emperors to resolve the Tao-cutting tribulation. This method caused Zhao Yuanji and the others to sigh with admiration, and they clicked their tongues in admiration. It must be Golden Cicada's idea. Fei Lan, the man in white that the blood-colored moth had transformed into, immediately guessed the truth. In the countless years he had spent in the mulberry forest, the one thing he could not see through the most was the golden cicada. In fact, in the eyes of all the living beings in the mulberry forest, the golden cicada was the only unfathomable and unfathomable existence. What dogs hit noble character and unquestionable integrity? Helping the younger generation? I really want to kill this brat, yet he wants me to help him? No way. The Thousand Feather Sword Flower howled. I won't agree to this either. Ancestor Blood Lotus snorted. I'm afraid you can't refuse. After this tribulation descends, it will trigger all kinds of tribulations in the entire 10,000 tribulations purgatory. You have no choice but to face it. If that's the case, why don't you just accept it? The voice of the golden cicada youth rang out again. The Thousand Feather Sword Flower, the Blood Lotus Ancestor, Wu Jiucheng, Go Tianxing, and the other old monsters all had ugly expressions on their faces. Submit to adversity? What did he take them, quasi-emperors, for? Forming good karma? Did he think that they were good people who repaid evil with good? This was really too depressing. Previously, in front of the 10,000 Tribulations Emperor Palace, Lin Sun alone had destroyed their plan to besiege Zhao Yuanji and the others, so that Zhao Yuanji now had the upper hand in the 10,000 Tribulations Purgatory. It was also because of Lin Sun that Fei Lan was lured out and pierced a petal of the Thousand Feather Sword Flower with the insignificant spiritual bow, which shocked the crowd. But no matter how angry they were, they couldn't do anything to Lin Sun, because not only was Fei Lan around, but Lin Sun was also protected by 7 terrifying monsters, so they couldn't even pinch this ant to death. And now, this kid actually dared to plot against them, and wanted to use their strength to resolve the Tao tribulation of the broken Tao. Didn't he put quasi-emperors in his eyes? Since when did an ant dare to provoke them again and plot against them? In his heart, what did he take quasi-emperors for? The more these old monsters thought about it, the more annoyed they felt, as if they had eaten a dead fly. The most unbearable thing was that they had no choice but to accept it passively. No matter how good-tempered they were, how well-bred they were, how tenacious they couldn't help but have an impulse to go crazy at this moment. And Zhao Yuanji and the others were all smiling happily. Speaking of which, since the appearance of Lin's son, their luck seemed to have turned for the better. Not only did he solve the predicament, but he also came all the way to the present. How could they not be happy? Quasi-emperors were also living people, with 7 emotions and 6 desires, good and evil likes and dislikes. The higher their cultivation and strength, the less they would hide their emotions, likes, and dislikes. Because they were strong enough, they had no scruples. If one were to think that those great figures that stood high up above treated humiliation and provocation as nothing, that they were emotionless, and that they didn't have any emotions, then that would be a huge mistake. At this time, Lin's son had no time to think too much. His mind was tense, and his expression was unprecedentedly dignified and vigilant. In the long and narrow crack in the sky, the obscure and terrible taboo power was constantly accumulating, becoming more and more terrifying. Only then did Lin's son realize that even if he had made full preparations, he still far underestimated the horror of the Tao tribulation of the broken Tao. This tribulation was simply not something that any strong man on the road of immortality could resolve. Boom! Suddenly, a battle spear formed from the taboo tribulation aura condensed from the crack. It was filled with the destructive taboo order power. As soon as it appeared, Lin's son's expression changed. I can't block it. This was his instinctive feeling, and it was extremely strong. However, as soon as this battle spear appeared, the 10,000 purgatory realms that had evolved into a bowl gave off a roar. Tens of thousands of tribulation auras surged out of every secret realm, like a turbulent, tumbling net of tribulation. When the taboo battle spear fell, it instantly collided with the endless tribulation aura. Rumble! The deafening roar sounded like the sky was falling and the earth was splitting. The terrible taboo aura of destruction began to rush into the different secret realms of the 10,000 purgatory realms. Damn it! Someone roared angrily. So it's really like this. Someone's expression changed, and he believed the golden cicada youth's words. Damn it! I can't believe I was tricked by something lower than an ant. Someone was flustered and exasperated. Especially Thousand Feathersword Flower, Blood Lotus Ancestor, Wu Jiucheng, Go Tianxing, and the others. Their faces were as black as the bottom of a pot, and they were so angry that they almost coughed up blood. But no matter how unwilling and depressed they didn't dare to be careless at this time. They could only resist. This was because the secret realms they were in were all suffering from the attacks of the taboo power of destruction. Lin Sun's black eyes brightened, and he heaved a long sigh of relief from his extreme nervousness and depression. He had already sensed that the taboo tribulation power had been broken down into many turbulent flows. When it descended in front of him, it had less than 1,000th of its original power. It seemed extremely weak, no different from an ordinary tribulation lightning. But because this taboo power was extremely strange and special, Lin Sun didn't dare to be careless. He circulated the energy in his body and used his cultivation method to resist. Boom! In an instant, the taboo power of destruction was shattered, turning into a rain of light that scattered and disappeared. Lin Sun didn't relax because more and more taboo power was surging out of the crack in the sky and descending. But compared to before, Lin Sun had recovered absolute confidence. He used his Tao and cultivation method, soared into the sky, and killed to his heart's content. Of course, he knew very well that the reason for this was that most of the power of the Tao tribulation had been shared by the other quasi-emperors. This time I really have to thank all of you. Lin Sun sighed. He didn't know that in the other secret realms, the old quasi-emperors who hated him to the bone had already cursed him, and their faces were so gloomy that it was almost dripping water. They had been tricked by an ant and succeeded. This was an unprecedented shame and humiliation for the high and mighty quasi-emperors who were superior to all saints. This is the variable. All tribulations are destined to change according to the variable. In the 10,000 Tribulation Emperor Palace, the young man with the golden cicada clapped his hands and laughed. He was very pleased to witness all this, because this was what he was happy to see. I feel it. Suddenly, Zhao Yuanji, who was standing in the 9,998th secret realm and fighting against the power of the Tao Tribulation, suddenly trembled, and a dazzling light shot out of his eyes. His face was full of surprise. It was the power of the great opportunity. As a quasi-emperor, a strange scene appeared in Zhao Yuanji's mind. He saw a path that led to the heavens. That path was so dazzling, sacred, supreme, mysterious, and unfathomable that it made his mind tremble. At the same time, the 10,000 Tribulation Purgatory Palace trembled. In the 10,000 Tribulation Emperor Palace, the 10,000 Tribulation Heaven Transformation Bowl that was quietly placed on the table also began to buzz and tremble, and mysterious ripples appeared on its rough black surface. Tribulation after tribulation, change after change. The young man with the golden cicada's eyes shone brightly, and his body exuded a shocking aura. At this moment, in the 10,000 Tribulation Purgatory, the quasi-emperors who were fighting against the Tao Tribulation sensed something, and their expressions changed drastically. The power of the great opportunity had been snatched away by someone. Who was it? They were all shocked and furious, and their hearts surged with unspeakable indignation. Originally, they were extremely depressed because they had been tricked by Lin Sun, and now that they sensed that the great opportunity had been snatched away, this heavy blow made them so angry that they almost vomited blood. Fei Lan frowned and let out a long sigh. The Blood Lotus ancestor let out a hoarse roar and went completely crazy. The aura of the 1,000 Feather Sword Flower suddenly became extremely violent. The other quasi-emperors, such as Wu Jiuchong, Go Qianxing, and the other quasi-emperors almost went crazy. Why? Why did this happen? They had waited bitterly for countless years, and this was the result they got? Indignation. No one knew better than them how great the blow they would suffer for missing such a great opportunity. Golden Cicada, you said that you would help me. Why did this happen? Chapter 1482. The White Cicada Girl was furious. Her beautiful face was full of violence and coldness. She was only one step away from breaking through the purgatory of 10,000 tribulations. She thought that with the help of the Golden Cicada youth, this great opportunity was destined to be at her fingertips. Who would have thought that this great opportunity would be snatched away by someone in advance? I have been dormant with you for countless years. Is this how you treat me? The White Cicada Girl shouted angrily. She called herself Emperor Bai. Naturally, she had been longing to become an emperor. But now, the hope that she had been waiting for countless years was completely lost. How could she be reconciled to this? She knew that the Golden Cicada youth must have heard it. I said that this great opportunity does not belong to you. This time I brought you here to prove this point so that you will not be obsessed with it. Sure enough, before long, the Golden Cicada youth sighed. Bai, if you still believe in me as before, when we leave here, I will find an opportunity for you to become an emperor. The White Cicada Girl gnashed her teeth and trembled with hatred. The next opportunity to become an emperor? Do I have to wait for countless years? No, it will be soon. The Golden Cicada youth's voice was firm. In today's great world, it is completely different from the past. The White Cicada Girl was silent for a long time, barely suppressing her anger and disappointment, and said coldly, From today on, before I become an emperor, you are not allowed to call me Bai. The Golden Cicada youth also stood in the palace of 10,000 tribulations and was silent for a moment. Finally, he sighed softly and said nothing. Lin Sun was unaware of all the changes. He was fighting against the Tao test with all his strength. Although he knew that most of the power of this great tribulation was shared by the other quasi-emperors, he did not dare to have any carelessness. Different from the tribulation of cultivation, passing the Tao test would not bring any benefits to Lin Sun's own cultivation. But as long as he broke through this tribulation, he could continue to cultivate the top 3 paths, and he could pursue the 3 paths of qi refining, soul refining, and body refining, and set foot on the road to the top of the saint realm. This was what Lin Sun longed for. However, this great tribulation was like a sudden disaster for the quasi-emperors who were distributed in different secret realms of the purgatory of 10,000 tribulations. Their faces were as black as the bottom of a pot, and they cursed Lin Sun's ancestors in their hearts. It was too aggrieving. They would absolutely not be so infuriated if they were schemed against by an opponent of the same level. But when an ant that they didn't take seriously stepped on their heads and pissed on them, that feeling was beyond disgusting. Don't let me catch you. The Blood Lotus ancestors' eyes were spitting fire. Damn it. Some of the more good-tempered and tenacious quasi-emperors could not help cursing out loud. How can this kid jump around like this? Why didn't the Tao tribulation of the severing Tao strike him to death? Wu Jiucheng, Go Tianxing, and the rest were flustered and exasperated. In fact, the most fundamental reason was that they were not only set up by Lin Sun this time, but also missed a great opportunity to become an emperor. This was the root cause of their rage and unwillingness. However, all of them attributed the reason to Lin Sun. They felt that if Lin Sun hadn't suddenly brought down the Tao tribulation, causing them to have no choice but to resist it passively, then they would definitely not have missed this great opportunity right before their eyes. In the end, the severing Tao tribulation disappeared, neutralized without any mishaps. There were no accidents. It would be abnormal if they still could not survive the tribulation in a special and mysterious world like the 10,000 tribulations purgatory, with a group of quasi-emperors sharing the power of the Great Tribulation. However, before those quasi-emperors could heave a sigh of relief, they suddenly realized that the huge tear in the sky had not disappeared. The terrifying, forbidden tribulation aura that filled the tear was 100 or even 1,000 times more terrifying than before. Even with their quasi-emperor cultivation, they felt their hearts tremble and their hair stand on end. This, the severing Tao tribulation, this is actually true. That great opportunity has been snatched away by someone. For a moment, the expressions of the group of quasi-emperors changed drastically, their expressions alternating between green and white. They felt depressed, as if thousands of horses were galloping in their hearts, and they were so angry that they almost coughed up blood. The severing Tao tribulation was the most terrifying, forbidden tribulation that every Saint Realm expert would encounter before becoming an emperor. From ancient times until now, it was unknown how many amazing experts have been stopped at this stage, not fated to become an emperor. Although the quasi-emperor was above the Saint Realm, in the final analysis, it was between the Saint Realm and the Emperor Realm, and they also had to face the severing Tao tribulation. Moreover, if these quasi-emperors didn't guess wrong, the power of this severing Tao tribulation would probably be shared by them, just like the previous severing Tao tribulation. For a moment, they all wanted to cry, but had no tears. This was not just a trap, but a wedding dress for others. They were sad and resentful that they didn't get the great opportunity, and now they had to help the guy who got the great opportunity share the risk of crossing the tribulation. It was really too depressing. After so long, it's finally coming. At the same time, Zhao Yuanji's purple robe was fluttering, and his eyebrows were full of disdain. He knew that after this tribulation, there would be no obstacle for him to become an emperor. My little friend, it's time to come back. In the palace of 10,000 tribulations, the young man with golden cicada reached out his hand and scooped up the heaven-transforming bowl. Buzz, with a strange fluctuation, Lin Sun's figure suddenly returned to the hall. Lin Sun was in a trance. Until now, he couldn't believe that he had crossed the severing Tao tribulation in this way. It was not too easy, but too incredible. The corner of the golden cicada young man's mouth raised into a strange curve, probably guessing Lin's thoughts. He thought to himself that if Lin could see how badly those quasi-emperors scolded him, he would understand how difficult it was to pass this tribulation after a while. Lin Sun completely sobered up and said, "Senior, thank you for your guidance." He knew that the reason why he could cross the severing Tao tribulation in such an incredible way was completely inseparable from the guidance of the young man with golden cicada. The young man with golden cicada smiled and said, "Even if I didn't give you guidance, Zhao Yuanji would help you fight for this opportunity. I'll just push the boat with the current to help you, Zhao Yuanji and me." Lin Sun was stunned. The young man with golden cicada pointed to the heaven-transforming bowl and said, "You see, this great opportunity was obtained by Zhao Yuanji. At this time, it has aroused the hostility of the severing Tao tribulation. However, like you, when Zhao Yuanji crosses this tribulation, the other quasi-emperors can only passively share the power of the tribulation." Lin Sun's expression also became strange. At this time, he was already a bystander, and he had a panoramic view of what was happening in the purgatory of 10,000 tribulations. He also saw that whether it was the ancestor of Blood Lotus, Thousand Feathersword Flower, Wu Jiuqiong, Go Tianxing, or the others, they all looked very terrible and were shouting and cursing. They didn't look like a group of quasi-emperors, but a group of shrews cursing in the street. Lin Sun's eyes widened, and he couldn't help laughing. However, when he noticed the severing Tao tribulation triggered by Zhao Yuanji, the smile on Lin Sun's face suddenly disappeared, and he became surprised and doubtful. Above the sky, a huge crack appeared in the void, and a spear of severing Tao emerged. It was full of the forbidden power that could destroy the world, and it was extremely terrifying. Lin Sun was sure that he had seen such a tribulation. In the temple under the sticks, he had seen the scene of the holy monk Du Ji and the Black Phoenix, holy empress, crossing the tribulation. At that time, these two powerful figures had gone through countless years of deduction, meditation, and communication, and together they wrote a scripture of tranquility under the Bodhi tree. At that time, the holy monk Du Ji once said that he had seen a higher realm and said, "If I am a devil, I will redeem all the Buddhas in the world as devils." But then he said another sentence, "If I am a Buddha, there will be no devils in the world." Then a great taboo tribulation came. This tribulation turned into a taboo spear, and in the end, a golden figure even appeared in the huge crack in the sky, like a ruler descending to the world, and his power shook the 9 heavens and 10 earths. In the end, the holy monk Du Ji and the Black Phoenix holy empress both suffered a tribulation. Lin Sun clearly remembered that the Black Phoenix holy empress had said to the holy monk Du Ji at that time, "When we take this step, we are destined to be like this. All the sages of ancient times are like this." Now, when he saw the scene of the severing Tao tribulation targeting Zhao Yuanji, Lin Sun finally confirmed one thing. The great tribulation that made the holy monk Du Ji and the Black Phoenix holy empress suffer was the tribulation of severing Tao. It turns out that the two seniors were already in the realm of quasi-emperor when they wrote the scripture of tranquility. Lin Sun's heart was in turmoil. Look, this is the true face of the tribulation of severing Tao. The eyes of the young man with golden cicada glowed with a frightening light, and his voice was low. Lin Sun looked up, and suddenly his scalp was numb. In the tribulation of severing Tao that Zhao Yuanji and the others were facing, the golden figure appeared again. The golden figure seemed thin, but it gave people a sense of infinity. It filled the world and oppressed the earth, as if it was the only ruler of all the heavens. In his palm, there was a golden halberd full of forbidden and destructive aura. Just by looking at it, Lin Sun's blood seemed to freeze, his soul was about to collapse, and a great fear arose in his heart. It was him, the culprit who made the holy monk Du Ji and the Black Phoenix holy empress fail to pass the tribulation. "Senior, is this a creature formed by the tribulation of severing Tao?" Lin Sun suppressed the fear in his heart and asked in a low voice. The young man with golden cicada shook his head. It should be said that this creature is just formed by the power of the law of will, and this power comes from an extremely powerful existence. You must have wondered why the ancient desolation realm was shrouded by three kinds of taboo tribulations after the primitive times. The reason is very simple. The three taboo tribulations came from the master of the law of will. Hearing this, Lin Sun trembled all over and almost couldn't believe his ears. The three taboo tribulations of severing Tao, trapping Tao, and severing Tao, which had shrouded the ancient desolation realm since ancient times, were actually created by one person. Who was he? What kind of terrible power did he have to turn the power of the law of will into the three taboo tribulations and cover the whole ancient desolation realm? Because of his power, since ancient times, countless practitioners dared not to practice three kinds of Tao at the same time, so that all the saints in the ancient desolation realm would be erased before they became emperors, so that billions of creatures in the ancient desolation realm were trapped in a cage and lost the opportunity to explore the outside world. Chapter 1483. The power of one person suppressed the ancient desolation realm for countless years. Who could believe it? The more Lin Sun thought about it, the colder he felt. From ancient times to the present, there were no strong cultivators who could cultivate three ways at the same time. Even the way to the outside world was blocked. All of this was done by one person. Who could believe it? In any case, we must remember him. He is the culprit of the decline of the ancient desolation realm among the 9 regions. The voice of the young man with golden cicada was low. He had always been gentle, calm, and composed, but now there was a touch of coldness between his eyebrows. Deep in his clear eyes, there was a flame burning. "Of course I won't forget," Lin Sun murmured. He remembered the imprint left by Holy Monk Du Ji and Black Phoenix Holy Queen, who also reminded him not to forget. Moreover, in his hand, there was a piece of scorched Bodhi wood, in which a taboo golden power was sealed. Now Lin Sun finally understood the source of this power. "Senior, do you know who he is?" Lin Sun took a deep breath and couldn't help asking. "I only know that the person who has the ability to set up such a catastrophe is at least in the Emperor realm." The young man with golden cicada said calmly. Reigning in the Emperor realm, Lin Sun's heart was in turmoil. Such a person's name is like a taboo. Otherwise, it would be a kind of blasphemy. You can call him the Nameless Supreme Emperor. The young man with golden cicadas said. It suddenly occurred to Lin Sun that when he asked Xian Kong, Ghost King, about his master's name in the city of Vain Death in the Forbidden Land of Styx, Lin Sun also heard the same words from Xian Kong, Ghost King. Master's Dharma name is like the Great Way. It can be understood by the heart, but not by the will. A Dharma name was like the Great Way. At that time, Lin Sun was shocked. How powerful was the cultivation of a master to have such power? Now, compared with the Nameless Supreme Emperor, Lin Sun vaguely understood something. He couldn't help but be stunned. Was the master of Mind Mountain also a supreme existence in the Emperor realm? At this time, the inexorable calamity bowl on the table suddenly shook violently, and the dark and rough bowl gave off a terrible pressure of Emperor realm. Just a wisp of aura was enough to kill any saint realm. However, Lin Sun couldn't feel it because it was all blocked by the aura of the young man with golden cicada. Even so, Lin Sun noticed the abnormality. As the bowl trembled violently, the whole table began to tremble as well. Then, the praying mat on the ground began to tremble. Then, the entire Myriad Tribulation Emperor Palace shook violently, producing rumbling noises. A strange light flashed between the brows of the golden cicada young man as he said, "Look, this is the backup plan that the Myriad Tribulations Emperor has set up. When someone encounters a great opportunity and faces the Tao-severing tribulation, not only will the quasi-emperors scattered throughout the purgatory of 10,000 tribulations passively help resolve the tribulation, even the Myriad Tribulations Heaven Transformation Bowl, the table, the meditation cushion, and even the power of the Myriad Tribulations Emperor Palace will help resolve the Tao severing tribulation. Lin Sun couldn't feel the mystery because his realm was too low. He could see it, but he couldn't feel it or understand it. In the 10,000 tribulations purgatory, he saw Zhao Yuanji in his purple robe like a peerless god of war, standing proudly in the air and fighting against the golden figure. Moreover, Zhao Yuanji became braver the more he fought. As for the golden figure, it was gradually being suppressed, and the power around its body was weakening and dimming. It wouldn't be long before the Tao severing tribulation would be broken. At that time, Zhao Yuanji would have swept away the biggest obstacle before becoming an emperor, and becoming an emperor was just around the corner. If the myriad tribulations emperor hadn't fallen, with his skill and wisdom, he should have been able to completely eradicate the 3 great taboos from the ancient desolation realm in this great era. Unfortunately, he was just one step away. The golden cicada young man sighed softly. However, the kindling he left behind has been passed down. Sooner or later, there will be hope to change all this. Speaking of this, he looked at Lin Sun and said, I will also leave later, and I don't know when I will see you again. Before I leave, I have something to remind you. Lin Sun was shocked and said, Senior, please give me some advice. According to my speculation, the Battle of the 9 Regions is bound to break out in a few years. If you want to become a sage, the opportunity may be in the battlefield of the 9 regions. The young man said, At that time, you have to be careful. The absolute paths towards the Tao and the other 8 regions have never been severed since the primeval times, and they continue until now. This also means that you'll encounter some enemies that are similarly formidable in the 9-region battlefield. He thought for a moment and said, However, the stronger the opponent, the better it is for you. You can regard it as a whetstone so that you can grow as fast as possible. The Great Era is unprecedented. It is an extremely brilliant cultivation, flourishing age that countless pioneers have sought for the ancient desolation realm at the cost of their blood and lives. If we don't seize this opportunity, the ancient desolation realm is doomed to have no chance to reverse the trend of decline in the future. My young friend, you still need to walk the road by yourself. In the future, I very much hope that I can meet you again. Speaking of this, he patted Lin Sun on the shoulder with a rather encouraging look. Thank you for your advice, Senior. Lin Sun bowed seriously and then said with a smile, I also hope that I can have a chance to chat with you like today. The golden cicada young man laughed heartily and said, Later, I will use the power of this place to break a path to the starry sky ancient path. But before that, I hope you can do one thing for me. What is it? To add some strength to the upcoming battle of the 9 regions. As the golden cicada young man said, he took out an ice leaf about the size of a palm. Which divine tree is this? Lin Sun could tell at a glance that this ice leaf came from the divine tree of ice and snow. When he first saw the golden cicada, the latter was dormant on the divine tree of ice and snow. The golden cicada young man nodded, stretched out a hand, and scooped up the heaven-transforming bowl. Buzz, suddenly, a figure of a quasi-emperor, was scooped up from the hell of 10,000 tribulations as easily as taking something out of his pocket. Golden cicada, what are you doing? This quasi-emperor was the green dragon. As soon as it appeared, it was stunned at first, and then showed a touch of anger. And when it saw Lin Sun, a cold, killing intent flashed in the depths of its green eyes. Crack! The golden cicada young man did not answer. He stretched out his hand, and his palm, like a universe, covered the whole body of the green dragon. In Lin Sun's eyes, it seemed that the green dragon was suddenly turned into a small earthworm, and its body shrunk countless times. This was the application of the law of space. The body of the green dragon did not shrink, but because of the palm of the golden cicada young man, it turned into a huge world. Golden cicada, you! The green dragon was shocked and roared. But everything was to no avail. Under the control of the golden cicada young man, its body was stuffed into the ice leaf. Lin Sun was stunned. This was a horrible creature at the level of quasi-emperor, but in the hands of the golden cicada young man, it was manipulated like an earthworm. It was so horrible that Lin Sun was shocked. He realized that the golden cicada young man in front of him was far more powerful than he had imagined. This dragon proved the Tao in ancient times. It is a variant of the green flame flood dragon. It is violent and bloodthirsty and sinful. If it can do something for the ancient desolation realm, it will be a good deed to atone for its sins. As the golden cicada young man said, he stretched out his hand again. Buzz! With a strange wave, the figure of Thousand Feathers Swordflower appeared. It seemed to feel something was wrong. As soon as it appeared, it suddenly attacked. Hundreds of millions of sword chi flowed out of its petals, clanging and killing the golden cicada young man. The golden cicada young man's palm was full of Taoist light. It looked like a hand, but it was like a vast universe, completely covering the Thousand Feathers Swordflower in its attack. But the golden cicada young man was not hurt at all. Golden cicada, I have never provoked you. Why do you attack me? Thousand Feathers Swordflower was furious. If I hadn't saved you back then, you would have been killed by Emperor Bai. This time, I need you to do one thing to repay the favor you owe me. As the golden cicada young man said, he had stuffed this amazing demonic flower quasi-emperor into the ice and snow leaf. Lin Sun looked at this scene in a daze, his heart surging. He remembered a sentence that the mysterious woman once said, "Both body and mind are transformed into a universe. Only with such cultivation can one be called a real emperor realm." Now, after seeing the process of the golden cicada turning into a universe between his palm and fingers and subduing the green dragon and the Thousand Feathers Swordflower one by one, there was only one thought in Lin Sun's mind. Was this golden cicada young man a real living great emperor? Next, the golden cicada young man constantly fished from the heaven-transforming bowl, taking out the quasi-emperor creatures one by one. There were bronze ants that were as large as calves and possessed unparalleled conquering power. There were also mystical birds that were snow-white in color and possessed divine steeds. There were also some rare variant quasi-emperor creatures, such as a flame thorn, a naturalized spirit born in the cold land of the Earth's core, and so on. In the end, even several quasi-emperors of the voodoo barbarians and the alliance of 10,000 races were fished out and stuffed into the ice and snow leaf. Seeing this scene, Lin Sun's eyes widened and he was completely shocked, speechless. Those were all quasi-emperors, but now they were fished out like fish and stuffed into the ice and snow leaf without any explanation. Some struggled, some resisted, some begged, and some went crazy. But in the end, they were all at the mercy of the golden cicada young man. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Lin Sun would have suspected that he was dreaming. After all, this was truly inconceivable. Almost before long, the golden cicada young man stopped and looked at Lin Sun, who was in a daze. He couldn't help laughing. It's just a little trick. I won't be so surprised when I see it more in the future. Lin Sun smiled bitterly after a while. How could it be called a little trick to take in, subdue, and suppress quasi-emperors one by one? I'm going to take the rest of them away. Do you have anything to say to them? Chapter 1484. The golden cicada youth looked at Zhao Yuanji, the Empress Zhao Tailai, and the Dean of Green Deer School. Lin Sun also noticed that the quasi-emperor experts in the purgatory of 10,000 tribulations included the blood lotus ancestor, the blood color moth, Wu Jiuchong, Go Tianxing, and a dozen other powerful figures. The Tao-cutting tribulation had been completely resolved at some point, and these quasi-emperors were now healing themselves. They were completely unaware that the other quasi-emperors had been captured and subdued by the golden cicada youth. Senior, where are you taking them? Lin Sun could not help asking. The starry sky, ancient path, the golden cicada youth said. The golden cicada youth said that Zhao Yuanji has already passed the Tao-severing tribulation, and it won't be long before he will be able to step into the true emperor realm. If he can make a breakthrough in the starry sky, ancient path, he might even be recommended into the Ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance. The Ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance is made up of Emperor Realm experts, and each Emperor Realm expert can bring 3 to 5 quasi-emperors as his followers. Nominally, They are followers, but if they can join the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance and follow an Emperor Realm expert to cultivate, it will be much easier for them to pass the tribulation and become Emperor Realm experts in the future. Hearing this, Lin Sun was shocked. Ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance. The golden cicada youth smiled. When you step onto the starry sky ancient path, you will learn more about the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance. Only then did Lin realize that the action of a young man with golden cicada was a good thing for Zhao Yuanji, Queen, Zhao Tailai, and others. But those guys... Lin Sun looked at the Blood Lotus ancestor, Wu Jiucheng, Go Qianxing, and the others, somewhat puzzled. To you, they are enemies, but no matter what, they are quasi-emperors and have a high chance of becoming emperors in the future. I'm taking them with me to give them a chance, and also to give the ancient desolation a chance, the golden cicada youth said. The golden cicada youth said, furthermore, many of their ancestors are currently in the ancient Wasteland Battle Alliance. If I bring them along, their ancestors will definitely owe me a favor. At this point, Lin Sun completely understood the golden cicada youth's thoughts. Every move of his had a deep meaning, and he was plotting for the future. Then those quasi-emperors suppressed by you. Before Lin Sun could ask, the young man with the golden cicada smiled and said, the Battle of the 9 Regions is coming. As quasi-emperors, they should do their part for the ancient desolation region. This is also what I want to ask of you. As he spoke, he handed the snow leaf to Lin Sun and said, when you go to the 9 Regions battlefield, if you have the chance, take this with you to the frontline battlefield guarded by quasi-emperor realm experts. At that time, if these quasi-emperors want to be freed, they will have to make up for their crimes and serve the ancient desolation region. A sense of respect arose in Lin Sun's heart, and he took the magical ice leaf with both hands. Cicada Lin Long Yuan Long, and I, Clan Palace King Clan Ancient You, and you, said, and Ancestor You, and said. The cicada youth said, you, the golden cicada youth said. You, and Buddha, and you, Dragon, Cicada, and said you, Emperor, and the golden cicada youth said, time is almost up. Say goodbye to them. Lin Sun was shocked. He stopped thinking and looked at Zhao Yuanji and Zhao Tailai in the heaven-transforming bowl. Unexpectedly, Zhao Yuanji and the others seemed to have been instructed by the golden cicada youth, and they all said something at this moment. I can break the tribulation of Tao today because of Lu Boya's guidance. Lin Sun, I owe Lu Boya a favor, and I will pay it back in the future. Lin Sun, you should also work hard to cultivate and strive to set foot on the starry ancient path as soon as possible. Zhao Yuanji looked gentle and sighed with emotion. I won't say anything else. I only have 8 words for you. The Great Way is difficult, and you have to temper yourself. Boy, take care. Lin Sun felt warm in his heart. From the first time he entered the Forbidden City when he was young to the present, he rarely met the man who held the supreme power of the empire. But he knew that the man had been watching him silently. At that time, it was under Zhao Yuanji's instruction that Zhao Tailai, the bloodthirsty king, helped him and the Lin family many times. Thank you for your teachings. Lin Sun responded solemnly. Green Deer School also has Lu Boya's painstaking efforts. Lin Sun, if you want to find the truth, you must be fully prepared. Green Deer School also said in a warm voice, ha 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 boy. I hope we can fight side by side and kill to our heart's content when we meet again in the future. Zhao Tailai laughed. In the future, the affairs of the empire will be controlled by the old priest in the observatory. Speaking of this, the queen suddenly showed a strange look. Also, take good care of Jing Xian. If I know you dare to bully her, I won't spare you. Lin Sun was caught off guard. Was she going to entrust Jing Xian to him? Is this your answer? The queen was a little dissatisfied. Senior, don't worry. I will take good care of Jing Xian and won't let her suffer. Lin Sun took a deep breath and said seriously, you still call me senior? The queen snorted. Lin Sun was a little embarrassed, but he still said, don't worry, auntie. The queen nodded with satisfaction. Immediately, a touch of sadness appeared between her eyebrows, and she said, in fact, I really want to arrange a marriage for you two before I leave. Lin Sun was so embarrassed that he didn't know what to say. At this time, Zhao Yuanji said, Well, let the young people arrange their own affairs. Don't make trouble for them. The queen said angrily, "What do you mean by making trouble? Can't parents care about their daughter's marriage?" Zhao Yuanji was stunned and smiled helplessly. Lin Sun was speechless. "Little friend, don't forget Sunset Tang Valley." Suddenly, the young man in white named Fei Lan, who was transformed by the bloody moth, said, "Since my old friend has recognized your identity, don't let him down. Golden Cicada, please return this bow to this little friend." Fei Lan waved his sleeve, and Insignificance Bow rose into the air. Insignificance Bow, the young man with Golden Cicada, stretched out his hand, and Insignificance Bow appeared out of thin air. He looked at it for a moment and said with a strange light in his eyes, "The guy who built this bow was a great figure. Of course, the spirit of this bow is also great." As he said, he handed Insignificance Bow to Lin Sun and said, "The owner of this bow is Tian Ke, a sworn enemy of an ancestor of Golden Crow." Later, Tian Ke disappeared strangely when exploring the Kunlun ruins, and only this bow came back to the world. From then on, the spirit of this bow made a great vow to destroy Golden Crow. Unfortunately, the power of this bow alone was not enough to defeat the ancestor of the Golden Crow bloodline. Hence, in the ultimate, the weapon spirit of the bow was suppressed by the ancestor of the Golden Crow bloodline and brought back to Sunset Tang Valley, while the bow was accidentally lost in the ultimate. Lin Sun immediately learned some of the origin of Insignificance Bow, and his mood couldn't help fluctuating. Only then did he know that the owner of Insignificance Bow was a big shot named Tian Ke. "Senior, who is the ancestor of Golden Crow?" Lin Sun couldn't help asking. The young man with Golden Cicada thought for a moment and said, "When you find the spirit of Insignificance Bow, you will naturally understand. This grievance involved too many people. If it was not necessary, he didn't want Lin Sun to get involved now." "Golden Cicada, why don't you tell him that the ancestor of Golden Crow is Dark Crow Emperor, who is now the chief deacon of Battle League of Ancient Desolation?" Suddenly, the white cicada girl sneered. "That old guy is surly and vengeful. If he knows that Insignificance Bow is in the hands of this boy, he—" The young man with Golden Cicada frowned and said, "I said you are not allowed to call me that again." The white cicada girl's beautiful face was covered with a gloomy expression. "Forget it." The young man with Golden Cicada sighed and waved his sleeve to cut off the connection with the purgatory of 10,000 tribulations. At this time, Lin Sun asked, "Senior, is Dark Crow Emperor the murderer who suppressed the spirit of Insignificance Bow?" The young man with Golden Cicada nodded. "However, these things have nothing to do with you. Even if Dark Crow Emperor knows that Insignificance Bow is in your hands, he can't return from the Starry Ancient Path." "But what if I enter the Starry Ancient Path in the future?" Lin Sun asked. The young man with Golden Cicada was silent for a moment and said, "Then regard Dark Crow Emperor as the #1 enemy and be vigilant." This sentence made Lin Sun's heart tremble. He realized that the ancestor of Golden Crow was destined to be a terrible emperor. "It's time to go." The young man with Golden Cicada seemed to notice something and suddenly looked up. "My little friend, it's time for you to leave. Take care." Then the young man with Golden Cicada turned around, showed a warm smile, and then waved his sleeve. Whoosh! In an instant, Lin Sun's eyes moved. When his vision recovered, he had been moved outside the Emperor Palace of 10,000 tribulations. "All good things must come to an end. My little friend, go quickly." The clear voice of Golden Cicada came from the gate of the Emperor Palace. Then the whole Emperor Palace of 10,000 tribulations shook violently. Cracks appeared in the sky, exuding a terrible taboo aura, which made all directions pale. This was the tribulation of interruption. From ancient times to the present, the ancient desolation territory had been turned into a cage, blocking the way of practitioners to explore the outside world. Whoosh! Suddenly, high up in the myriad tribulations Emperor Palace, the young man with the Golden Cicada was walking barefoot in the air with the myriad tribulations heaven transformation bowl in his hand. He looked at the void as if it was a flight of stairs, walking step by step towards the crack that appeared in the sky. He looked calm and composed, and his whole body exuded a terrible and boundless pressure of the Emperor realm, rushing up to the sky. Before the power of the taboo tribulation came, it was broken, crushed, and disappeared in the cracks. Lin Sun's eyes widened, and his pupils were full of shock. The Emperor realm. He was really a great emperor. Boom. When Lin Sun woke up from the shock, he saw that the figure of the young man with golden cicada had become extremely tall and filled the sky. Then, like a trapped dragon rising to the sky, he flew away. Chapter 1485. Boom. With the departure of the golden cicada youth, the towering and ancient emperor of Calamity Palace also collapsed, turning into smoke and dust. Lin Sun stood there, watching all this, his mood fluctuating. The experience of entering the mulberry forest this time was like a bizarre, dazzling, and unbelievable dream that seemed so unreal. First, he fell into the abyss of calamity and attracted 7 terrible monsters with the no-blame lamp. Later, Lin Sun knew that these 7 monsters were the guardians of the Emperor of innumerable tribulations in those days. Each of them had a great background. It was only because of the suppression of the forbidden power that they became neither human nor ghost, unable to awaken their own consciousness. It was also with the help of the no-blame lamp that they regained a trace of consciousness and found the way home. Before leaving, they each gave Lin Sun a token. The golden cicada youth said that these tokens would be of great use in the future. Until arriving at the Emperor of Calamity Palace, Lin Sun saw the real battle of the quasi-emperors and also saw many terrible big shots. The blood-colored moth that turned into a young man in white named Fei Lan, the ancestor of Blood Lotus, who looked like a child with a blood lotus leaf on his head, and a 1,000-feather sword flower that emitted hundreds of millions of sword chi. All of these shocked Lin Sun, and his mind was impacted. Until the appearance of the golden cicada youth, Lin Sun felt that listening to the words of a wise man was better than reading books for 10 years. Explaining the state of cultivation and the way to become a sage, it seemed to be a casual chat, but in fact, it was no less than a preaching and dispelling of doubts. Then, climbing the 9,999 stone steps, the cultivation of body refining was transformed into heavy training, and he entered the 9 retribution of longevity. Finally, in front of the gate of the Emperor of Calamity Palace, he awakened the supernatural power, Forbidden Death. It could be said that the awakening of the supernatural power of Forbidden Death was one of Lin Sun's biggest gains this time, because the power of this supernatural power was really too amazing and terrifying. Then, under the guidance of the golden cicada youth, Lin Sun saw the desk and the futon that accompanied the Emperor of Calamity all his life, and also learned some of the past stories of the Emperor of Calamity. It was not until he saw the Heaven Transforming Bowl that Lin Sun knew that a real imperial weapon could evolve such a magical and incredible world. 10,000 Tribulations Purgatory. It was also in the 10,000 Tribulations Purgatory, with the help of a group of quasi-emperors, that he managed to resolve the Tao tribulation that had been hanging over his heart. Zhao Yuanji also used this opportunity to seize a great opportunity and resolve the Tao severing tribulation. Becoming a martial emperor was just around the corner. The golden cicada youth also took this opportunity to break through the tribulation of imprisonment in one fell swoop. He broke through the void and soared into the sky, stepping onto the mysterious ancient path of the starry sky. All of this seemed so inconceivable. But when Lin thought about it at this time, he vaguely felt that since the appearance of the young man with golden cicada, all these things seemed to have been under the young man's inference and control, giving people a feeling that everything was natural and logical. Lin Sun had never felt a trace of nervousness or unsteadiness, nor had he felt any panic or abruptness. That in itself was incredible. Some people would give others a sense of peace of mind just by standing there. It was as if anything that happened would no longer be a problem. What an incredible person! Yi Zichen muttered. After a long silence, Lin Sun couldn't help murmuring. There was a kind of unconsciously subduing and calming power in the young man with golden cicada. It had nothing to do with whether he was in the martial emperor realm or not. Senior, I will definitely do what you asked me to do. Lin Sun took a deep breath and carefully put an ice and snow leaf in his palm into the wordless pagoda. This leaf would play its due role in the battle of the 9 regions. After a while, Lin Sun turned around and left. It was time to leave. The big opportunity in the mulberry forest had come to an end. It was meaningless to stay. Lin Sun sneaked along the original road carefully. Before coming here, Lin Sun was safe and sound with the protection of the 7 terrifying monsters. But now, Lin Sun was not sure whether he would encounter any tricky dangers along the way. However, as he moved forward, Lin Sun clearly found that the gray mist that enveloped the mulberry forest was gradually fading. This mysterious and unpredictable world seemed to have lost a kind of palpitating power and became calm. It seems that the token given by Du So won't be of any use. Lin Sun couldn't help smiling as he played with the token in his hand. It would be better if he didn't have to use it. He would definitely have a chance to use it in the future. Suddenly, there was a fierce sound of fighting in the distance. Lin Sun was shocked, and his whole body tightened. Without hesitation, he held the insignificant bow and blue arrow in his hands. He didn't forget that Zhao Xingye once said that in the mulberry forest there were not only quasi-emperors, but also creatures at the level of saints, great saints, and king of saints. However, just as Lin Sun was about to detour around the fighting area, he heard a familiar voice. His face suddenly showed a touch of surprise. It turned out to be them. After thinking for a moment, Lin Sun quietly approached. It was a gray and hazy desert, and the corpse of an enormous beast lay on the ground. Obviously, it had died not long ago, and its enormous body was still dripping with blood. Ha ha! Those quasi-emperors ushered in the tribulation of Tao cutting. But because of this tribulation, all the powerful creatures dormant in the mulberry forest suffered and were killed by the power of this tribulation. Neo Jinyu laughed. These are all ruthless characters comparable to great saints and king of saints. They died, but I got lucky. Greed was written all over his face. The huge corpse in front of him was left by a horrible creature at the level of king of saints who died in the tribulation not long ago. It seemed to be a corpse, but for Neo Jinyu, it was a priceless treasure. Every inch of the body of the king of saints, every inch of flesh, every inch of skin and hair was branded with the power of the law of saints. If it could be extracted, it could not only be used to refine elixirs, but also to refine treasures. It had immeasurable magical effects. Next to him, Neo Tunshin also looked envious and covetous. We've been searching for a long time before we finally found a corpse that's still relatively intact. It's really too rare. In the opposite position, Dark Blood Divine Shaman said in a hoarse voice. His face was pale, and he still looked very weak, but his eyebrows were full of excitement. Before, when the tribulation of Tao cutting came, they were so scared that their souls almost came out, and they were extremely frightened. But later they found that perhaps because they were too weak, they were not killed by the taboo tribulation. Only the powerful creatures that were scattered throughout the mulberry forest were almost all killed by the taboo tribulation, and most of them did not even leave behind their corpses. So one could imagine how terrifying the tribulation of Tao cutting was. It was clearly targeted at quasi-emperors, but under the power of this tribulation, other creatures were also affected. For example, the corpse of a king of saints in front of them did not die too tragically. At least, it left behind a corpse that was relatively complete. This was also the reason why Neo Jinyu and Dark Blood Divine Shaman were so excited. They naturally did not dare to have extravagant hopes of competing with those quasi-emperors for great opportunities, but they could use this opportunity to collect some opportunities that tempted them. For example, this corpse of a king of saints in front of them. I want this corpse. Does Taoist and Shui have any objections? Suddenly, Neo Jinyu stopped smiling and looked at Dark Blood Divine Shaman not far away. His voice was calm, but there was a hint of threat in it. The smile on Dark Blood Divine Shaman's old face suddenly froze. For a moment, The atmosphere suddenly became tense. Guang fucking and Dark Spirit, who were standing next to Dark Blood Divine Shaman, also looked uncertain. They were shocked and angry. Brother, we found this corpse first. If you want it, you can have it, but you should at least give us half of it, right? After a long while, Dark Blood Divine Shaman took a deep breath and said with a gloomy expression. Neo Jinyu sneered and said with a cold expression, Old man, if it wasn't for the fact that our two camps had worked together before, do you think I would discuss with you again? After a pause, he said expressionlessly, If we fight, I'm afraid that it will be very difficult for you to leave this place, let alone obtain the treasure. Dark Blood Divine Shaman's expression became increasingly ugly. He secretly gritted his teeth and finally forced a smile. Forget it, this corpse belongs to you. As soon as he said this, his heart bled and he was extremely resentful. If it wasn't for him being heavily injured by that stinking bitch, Zhao Xingye, and then suffering a surprise attack from that little bastard surnamed Lin, causing the foundation of his Grand Dao to be injured and his vitality to be greatly damaged, how could he possibly be threatened by Neo Jinyu now? A wise man submits to circumstances. Old man, you are very smart. Neo Jinyu laughed again, very proud. Although he had also been seriously injured by Zhao Xingye, he had absolute confidence to suppress Dark Blood Divine Shaman. This was also the reason why he dared to take the opportunity in front of him. In the dark, Lin Sun almost couldn't help laughing when he saw this scene. It was really interesting that the two sages were putting on a dog-eat-dog show. In particular, Dark Blood Divine Shaman's expression at this moment was extremely ugly, as if his parents had died. But the next moment, Lin Sun's eyes narrowed. He saw Neo Jinyu wave his sleeve, and a ray of light covered the corpse of the King of Saints. When he was about to put it away, there was a sudden change. The corpse of the King of Saints suddenly exploded, and blood rained everywhere. A taboo aura of disaster also spread. Neo Jinyu was shocked. Although he subconsciously dodged, he was still contaminated by some of the taboo aura. He immediately let out a shrill scream. One of his arms turned into ashes in an instant and drifted away. This sudden scene caused the Dark Blood Sacred Shaman to be shocked as well. Shortly after, a mocking smile appeared on his face. Ha! Looks like this fortuitous encounter isn't easy to get. Old man, are you courting death? Neo Jinyu was furious. He didn't get a chance, but instead lost an arm. If he hadn't dodged in time, he would have almost lost his life. How could Neo Jinyu not be angry at this sudden disaster? I've lost an arm. At this time, you still want to threaten me? Dark Blood Divine Shaman's expression was gloomy as he spoke coldly. P.S. Thank you, young man Xin Yuli, for your gifts and support. Congratulations on being promoted to the leader. Thank you for voting and gifting when Goldfish was not at home. Chapter 1486. Neo Jinyu could not help but laugh out of anger when he saw how fearless the Dark Blood Divine Shaman was. So what if I lost an arm? Do you think I can't kill you? The Dark Blood Divine Shaman was expressionless. You want both of us to suffer? Sure, bring it on. Boom! A terrifying dark light emerged from Neo Jinyu's body and rose into the sky with terrifying power. Almost at the same time, wisps of bloody light flowed around the skinny figure of the Dark Blood Divine Shaman. They evolved into the Divine Tao and undulated like a tide. Woo woo woo, the world was oppressive and the void shook, producing a deafening roar. Although the two true saints were seriously injured, the power they exuded was still terrifying. Neo Tunshin, Dark Spirit, and Guang fucking all turned pale and retreated in horror. Kill, go to hell. Neo Jinyu and the Dark Blood Divine Shaman rushed up almost at the same time. However, to everyone's surprise, when the two of them were still halfway there, their figures suddenly flashed, and they used a teleportation technique to vanish. The next moment, they both appear in the area where Lin Sun had been hiding. Boom! Neo Jinyu slapped down without hesitation. It was so powerful that the void collapsed, and the terrifying power of the Divine Tao was like a landslide and tsunami. The Dark Blood Divine Shaman took out the white bone hammer, which turned into a white light and hammered down fiercely. All of this happened very suddenly. From a conflict to the fight, it was only a split second. It was incredibly fast, but they did not kill each other. Instead, they attacked Lin Sun together. Obviously, the two true saints had noticed Lin Sun's existence. They pretended not to know, but in fact, they had already communicated with each other in secret. And the conflict between the two, just now, was just an act. It could not be taken seriously. Boom! The sky fell and the earth cracked. The sun and moon lost their light. How could the long-planned attack of the two true saints be ordinary? The land within 1,000 miles seemed to have collapsed and was destroyed. The terrible turbulence of the holy light swept across, shining with a light that could chill the hearts of the people. This Neo-Tunshin dark spirit and the others were shocked. Only then did they realize that the situation was not right. The two true saints were not going to kill each other, but to deal with another opponent. But who was the opponent? They suppressed the shock in their hearts and looked towards the battlefield. At the same time, Neo Jinyu and the Dark Blood Divine Sorcerer's expressions changed at the same time. The joint attack that they were confident in had failed. They found it hard to believe. Old bastard, since I dared to come here, do you really think I'm here to seek death? In the distance, there was a sneer. In the rolling smoke and dust, Lin Sun's tall figure appeared. His clothes were fluttering in the wind, spotless. Behind him, a pair of black burning god wings flickered with an illusory luster. Earlier, it was precisely by relying on the power of the burning god wings that he was able to safely avoid this premeditated slaughter. Lin, Neo-Tunshin, Dark Soul Jun, and Light Floating Qing cried out involuntarily in disbelief. They had never imagined that the target of the two saints would be him. Anyone below the saint state was like an ant. But now, there were two saints working together to plot against and kill an ant. This was naturally too surprising. Neo Jinyu and the Dark Blood Divine Sorcerer's faces sank. Before, the Dark Blood Divine Sorcerer had secretly told Neo Jinyu that although Lin Sun was an ant, he should not be underestimated at all. He had a treasure that could threaten a saint. That was why Neo Jinyu, as a saint, chose to join hands with the Dark Blood Divine Sorcerer to deal with a young man like Lin Sun, who was like an ant in his eyes. At first, Neo Jinyu thought it was making a mountain out of a molehill. But now, Neo Jinyu found that he was wrong. The killing blow that the two sages had planned for a long time had been dodged. How can an ordinary ant do this? You've already guessed that we would attack? The Dark Blood Divine Sorcerer was still in disbelief, and his expression was very ugly. I didn't guess it. However, I am very sure that with my cultivation level, it is impossible for me to hide from the senses of two true divines. However, you two old bastards are so funny. You even pretended to not know anything. You are true divines. Don't you think that using such a method is embarrassing? Lin Sun sneered. Yes, from the very beginning. He was sure that when he got close, even if he had the aura of swan venom to cover his breath, he couldn't hide from the saints. So when he saw Neo Jinyu and the Dark Blood Divine Sorcerer's pretentious act, he felt it was ridiculous. At the same time, he had long been vigilant. That was why he could avoid the joint attack of the two saints at the first moment with the power of the burning Godwing. Hearing Lin Sun's undisguised sarcasm, the faces of Neo Jinyu and the Dark Blood Divine Sorcerer became even more gloomy and livid. It was embarrassing enough for them to be dodged by an ant, but now they were being ridiculed in such a way. How could they not be angry? Oh, you're sharp-tongued. Do you think you can escape this time, little bastard? The Dark Blood Divine Sorcerer's voice was cold and murderous. The chi around him was like a sharp blade, firmly locking on Lin Sun in the distance. Lin Sun didn't escape, and even seemed to see through the Dark Blood Divine Sorcerer's thoughts. He said indifferently, "Cut the crap, you old beast. Don't worry. I won't use the bottle that makes you uneasy this time, nor will I ask for anyone's help." The Dark Blood Divine Sorcerer was stunned, as if he couldn't believe it. On the other hand, Neo Jinyu was a little surprised. Usually, an ant like Lin Sun would be scared out of his wits even if he faced a true saint. But at this time, Lin Sun looked extremely calm, and that calmness was definitely not a pretense. For a moment, Neo Jinyu felt indecisive. His expression was uncertain as he tried to examine the young man in the distance, as if trying to find some flaws in his expression. But to his disappointment, Lin Sun's calm and composed attitude had absolutely no trace of pretense. The Dark Blood Divine Sorcerer was also stunned. He glanced at the indifferent Neo Jinyu beside him, and he was also surprised. This seemed extremely inconceivable, at least for Neo Tunshin, the Dark Spirit Sorcerer, and Guang fucking. They almost couldn't believe their eyes. Two true saints, even though they were already seriously injured. How could they have doubts when facing an ant? If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, Neo Tunshin and the rest would never have believed that there was such a crazy and unreasonable thing in this world. What on earth do you want to do? With a bang, the Dark Blood Divine Sorcerer gritted his teeth, and the power emitted from his body became more and more terrifying, causing the sky and earth to change color. Of course, I want to fight with you. Lin Sun smiled, revealing his snow-white teeth. Of course, it would be best if I could kill you. Neo Jinyu was so angry that he laughed. This little bastard was too insolent. Do it. The Dark Blood Divine Sorcerer paused between each word, overflowing with killing intent. All right. Neo Jinyu nodded without hesitation. In the current situation, if they continue to hesitate, it would only make them look more embarrassed and humiliated. But at this moment, Lin Sun let out a loud laugh. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and a terrifying divine light shot out from his cold eyes. You should have done this long ago. Boom. Before he finished speaking, under the shocked gazes of Neo Tunshin and the rest, Lin Sun actually took the initiative to attack, and he was attacking the two true sages. Such a scene had never happened before, but now it was happening right before their eyes. Neo Tunshin and the rest opened their mouths wide, and their minds went blank. Wasn't this 2F** King crazy? But no matter what they thought, the battle had already begun. Boom! Heaven and earth shook, and the sound was like thunder. At this moment, Lin Sun's body was shining brilliantly, surging with the bright and holy 9 pristine Tao light, which evolved into the strange phenomenon of a rotating abyss. And his divine soul and chi refinement power also reached their peak in an instant, and his entire body was burning fiercely like a huge furnace. The wrath of Yazi, the battle saint technique, the everlasting leakless. All the secret martial arts techniques were also used with full force. It could be said that Lin Sun had reached the 9 retributions of the longevity realm in chi refinement, body refining, and soul refining. After passing the most dangerous and merciless Tao tribulation, Lin Sun attacked with full force at this moment. But in the eyes of the two true sages, his stance was like the greatest provocation in the world, and it made them gnash their teeth in hatred. Without hesitation, they attacked brazenly. Rumble. For a moment, the sky and earth were turned upside down, and the land within 1,000 miles turned into a dangerous battlefield that seemed like the end of the world. The terrifying aura made Neo Tunshin, Dark Spirit, and Guang fucking retreat far away subconsciously, their faces filled with shock. Bang, bang, bang. On the battlefield, Lin Sun's aura was like a rainbow. But even so, under the two true sages' furious attacks, he was still pushed back and sent flying again and again. His entire body was like a sandbag, and he seemed to have no strength to fight back. This made Neo Tunshin and the others secretly heave a sigh of relief, and a hint of relief appeared on their faces. This was normal. After all, Lin Sun had not become a saint, so how could he fight a true sage of a higher level? And there were 2 of them. The current battle had already shown that Lin Sun's provocation was completely overestimating himself, like a moth flying into a flame. It was extremely laughable, arrogant, and forgetful. Who does he really think he is, that he can challenge the dignity of saint? Neo Tunshin sneered. Let's see how he dies. Dark Spirit gritted his teeth, his expression ruthless. Only Guang fucking's expression of ecstasy and relief was gradually replaced by a touch of fear, horror, and solemnity. Lin Sun was indeed losing ground. But he was not killed. There were two true sages, but they could not crush an ant to death at the first moment. This itself was too abnormal, too shocking. Guang fucking could not think of a single strong person who could fight a saint like Lin Sun, who could fight a true sage with his immortal level cultivation. Similarly, there are two true sages. Chapter 1487. Bang! On the battlefield, Niu Jinyu waved his fist, which was like a mountain across the sky. Lin Sun was pushed back again, and his entire body flew out violently. Almost at the same time, the Dark Blood Divine Shaman's white bone hammer swept out, trying to take this opportunity to kill Lin Sun. However, Lin Sun narrowly avoided it with the burning god wings. Damn it! The Dark Blood Divine Shaman's face was gloomy. It was already very embarrassing for two sages to join forces to kill a young man who had not become a sage. It would be shameful. However, what embarrassed them now was that Lin Sun, a nonentity who seemed to be defenseless, could not kill him in a short time. This was undoubtedly too unbelievable. Since when did a nonentity who had not become a sage have the right to fight against a true sage? Admittedly, both of them were seriously injured, but no matter what, they were sages after all. In the past, they could easily crush someone like Lin Sun with one finger. But today, everything seemed to have changed. Niu Jinyu and the Dark Blood Divine Shaman could see that the reason why Lin Sun was able to struggle until now was partly because of the magical, holy feather treasure. But more importantly, Lin Sun's foundation was too strong. Among the three cultivation paths of Qi refining, soul refining, and body refining, any one of them was enough to surpass his peers and have invincible power. The two true sages almost could not believe it. How could there be such a heaven-defying monster in this world? Boom! The battle continued. Looking from afar, the world seemed to be sinking. Divine light flowed like a waterfall, and Taoist light poured like a torrent. The scene was extremely terrifying. Lin Sun's entire body seemed to be burning. All his cultivation and strength were deduced to the extreme. Taoist light roared and flowed all over his body. Although he was repeatedly defeated and was in a dangerous situation, surprisingly, he was not seriously injured from the beginning to the end. Moreover, as time went by, he became braver and braver. In the past, he had indeed killed many true sages, but that was with the power of the Buddha heart of slaughter. But now, he was completely relying on his own cultivation and strength to fight against two true sages. Even if the two true sages were seriously injured, it was still a shocking problem. After all, in the past years, no one could fight against the saints with the power of the longevity realm like Lin Sun. For Lin Sun, being able to achieve this also made him excited. After returning to the mortal world, Lin Sun did not slack in his cultivation, but the opponents he met along the way could only be described as too weak. Even Yo Tunshin and Meng Lianqing were nothing in Lin Sun's eyes. After entering the mulberry forest, the opponents he encountered were too powerful and terrifying. Every one of them was a terrifying existence with the cultivation of a quasi-emperor. All this made Lin Sun have no chance to test his current cultivation and how powerful he was. After fighting with the two true saints, Niu Jinyu and the Dark Blood Holy Sorcerer, Lin Sun finally knew what level his combat power had reached. It could be said that the reason why Lin Sun rashly showed up this time and didn't hesitate to confront the two sages head-on was that he regarded them as whetstones to test his combat strength. "Little bastard, die!" Niu Jinyu roared, his voice like a clap of thunder. Just this roar alone was enough to crush some of the kings of the longevity realm. But Lin Sun's mind was steady, and his soul was like a rock. He was not shaken at all. Boom! Niu Jinyu seemed to be completely enraged. He used his killer move and turned into a black divine bull with a body of 3,000 feet tall, like a black mountain. Its four hooves were like pillars supporting the sky, flashing with the terrifying luster of the law of the divine way. Ancestor is going to fight with his life? Niu Tunshin was shocked. He was originally excited, thinking that Lin Sun, who was completely suppressed, could not escape. He never thought that he would see such a scene. This made him feel that something was wrong at the first moment, and his body felt cold. The smile on the lips of the dark spirit, holy sorcerer, also froze. He also realized that something was wrong, like Nyo Tunshin died. With a loud roar, thousands of miles of mountains and rivers collapsed and exploded under the pressure of Nyo Jinyu's huge and boundless body like a piece of paper. Lin Sun's heart also tightened, and his expression was solemn. He repeatedly activated the burning god wings, and his figure was like a ray of light, shuttling through the terrifying turbulence. Even so, he was under omnipresent pressure. The terrifying power of the divine way was too turbulent, making him feel like a lone boat in a vast ocean, in danger of being destroyed at any time. "Old man, why are you still not attacking?" Nyo Jinyu roared, his beard and hair standing on end. He was already seriously injured, and this attack had already exhausted all his strength. If he still could not kill Lin Sun, he did not even dare to think about the consequences. Whoosh! Before he could finish speaking, the dark blood divine shaman had already attacked. A white bone hammer suddenly grew to a length of 10,000 feet. Shadows that looked like god of barbarians appeared on the bone hammer. They shone with a dark light and caused the world to darken. It was as if they had returned to the ancient, chaotic times. One could clearly see that the skinny old face of the dark blood holy sorcerer turned pale in an instant and became much dimmer. There was no doubt that this attack also used all the strength of the dark blood holy sorcerer. If we don't kill this guy, he'll be an unimaginable threat in the future. Luckily, he's destined to die. Guang fucking clenched her fists tightly, feeling as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her heart. When she saw Lin Sun's performance previously, she felt as if she was about to collapse from the pressure. She could not imagine how terrifying someone like Lin Sun would be if he became a sage. But now, Guang fucking was sure that Lin Sun was destined to die in the face of the furious attack of two true sages. Nyo Tunshin and Dark Soul Jin also revealed nervous and expectant expressions. Their thoughts were similar to Guang fucking's. At this moment, it was undoubtedly the moment to determine the victor. Even though the two true sages were seriously injured, their attacks with their lives on the line were something that even true sages of the same level would have to avoid, let alone Lin Sun. At this moment, the vast universe and the surrounding mountains and rivers seemed to be covered in a layer of terrifying destructive aura, and an aura of collapse and annihilation appeared. At this moment, Nyo Tunshin and Guang fucking Dark Soul Jun was filled with anticipation, and he paid close attention. At this moment, no one noticed that there was a strange and obscure esoteric power suddenly erupting from Lin Sun's body. Swish! An illusory and magnificent light, like a flying feather, suddenly appeared between heaven and earth. Then there was a moment of stillness. It was a real stillness. The power, aura, light, and everything in this world all showed a strange pause in their operation. For all living beings in the world, this moment seemed extremely inconspicuous, like a flick of a finger. But in the eyes of practitioners, a moment of life and death could be decided. This was the order of time, the operation of heaven and earth, the birth and death of all things, and the thoughts and actions of living beings all operated in time. Even for the Emperor realm, what they diligently pursued was to break the shackles of the order of time, to achieve a state of great freedom, so as to achieve the goal of immortality. It could be imagined how terrifying the rule of time was. But now, at this moment, he was imprisoned. Then, at this moment, Lin Sun narrowly avoided Nyo Jinyu's killing attack and the bone hammer of dark blood divine sorcerer. It was also at this moment that the insignificant bow was fully drawn and the blue sky arrow burst out. For the Emperor realm, time could be said to be a supreme power like a shackle. For the true saint, it was destined that he couldn't escape the shackles of time. At this moment, Nyo Jinyu didn't realize that everything had changed after the time imprisonment. He was rushing to kill Lin Sun with this blow. But suddenly, an incomparably sharp arrow was right in front of his eyes. The horrible breath emitted by the arrow scared him out of his wits. His face changed in horror, but it was too late for him to dodge. Bang! The place between his eyebrows, which was as huge as a house, was pierced by an arrow, bringing out a string of scarlet waterfall of blood. At this moment, Dark Blood, divine sorcerer, glanced at this scene. He was so shocked that his scalp was numb, and he cried out involuntarily, "How could it be possible?" There was incomparable horror in his roar. At that moment, time was imprisoned, and all the scenes seemed to be forbidden. It looked extremely strange and horrifying. For the first time, Dark Blood Divine Sorcerer felt a sense of panic and despair of being as small as an ant, and death was everywhere. This was the power of time. Even if time was imprisoned for a moment, it was still too terrifying for a big shot like the Saint Realm. Boom! In the sound of the explosion, Neo Tunshin's huge body suddenly exploded. His head, neck, chest, limbs were all torn and smashed by the monstrous and fierce arrow. Looking from afar, the rolling scarlet flesh and blood fell from the void like a thick river of blood. At the same time, above the sky, there was a burst of Taoist sound that sounded like a mournful wail, surging in all directions. It was said that every time a saint died, heaven and earth would mourn for him. Dark Blood Divine Sorcerer suddenly woke up, and his skinny old face was covered with a horrified expression. Dead? In an instant, such a powerful, true saint like Neo Jinyu died in this world. For the first time since he started cultivating, Dark Blood Divine Sorcerer felt a real great fear. In the distance, Neo Tunshin, Guang Fucking, and Dark Spirit were all stunned, their minds completely blank. At the moment when they were imprisoned, they didn't feel anything unusual at all, because the time was too short, just a moment. But in such a moment, such a bloody and horrible scene happened, which directly shocked their minds and thoughts, making them completely sluggish. Whoosh! The blood of the saint fell, scarlet and poignant. This was the power of the innate supernatural power, forbidden death. It was also the first time that Lin Sun used this supernatural power that was innate and branded in his blood. That kind of power was really like the legendary taboo power. It was so horrible that Lin Sun couldn't help feeling shocked and in a trance. Time. This was a kind of power that even the Emperor Realm was extremely afraid of. Lin Sun only knew this before, but he couldn't understand its deep meaning. But now he understood. The power of time was indeed too terrible. P.S. I'm going back to my country today, so I can only do one chapter. Please excuse me. Chapter 1488. If a true saint's soul and body were not completely erased, it was impossible to kill him. This was the power of the Saint Realm. But now, Neo Jinyu was killed in an instant. This caused the Dark Blood Grand Shaman to be utterly shocked, and his mind was in chaos. He finally understood why Lin Sun seemed so calm and composed earlier. It turned out that he already had the ability to kill a saint, and this time, without the help of any holy treasure, he broke through the barrier of realms and killed Neo Jinyu with an extremely incredible secret method. It was not rare to kill a saint in the past years, but with the cultivation of the longevity 9th Retribution Realm, he crossed the barrier of the saint realm and killed a saint. This was simply unheard of and unseen. At least as far as the Dark Blood Grand Shaman knew, such a terrible thing had never happened before. He was even sure that if this matter was spread out, no one in the world would believe that such a crazy thing could happen. What secret method is this? The Dark Blood Grand Shaman screamed like a frightened beast, and his face was full of horror. Lin Sun answered him with an arrow without hesitation. Buzz! The blood-red bowstring of the Insignificance bow was pulled to the fullest, and the dark and dull blue sky arrow turned into a ray of light and burst out. The Dark Blood Grand Shaman wanted to teleport and dodge, but he was shocked to find that the blue sky arrow was like a shadow, firmly locked on him, and he couldn't get rid of it at all. Go to heaven and go to hell. Boom! In the deafening roar, half of the Dark Blood Grand Shaman's body exploded, and he screamed miserably. At the beginning, he was seriously injured by Zhao Xingye, and his vitality was greatly damaged. Then he was hit by Lin Sun with the power of the infinite Tao bottle in front of the white bone ropeway, which almost killed him and seriously injured his Tao foundation. It was not easy for him to hold on until now. In order to kill Lin Sun just now, he tried his best, but unfortunately, it was broken by Lin Sun's forbidden death, so the Dark Blood Grand Shaman had long lost the capital to deter Lin Sun. On the other hand, Lin Sun had never used the insignificance bow and the blue sky arrow before. He was waiting for such a moment, which immediately caught the Dark Blood Grand Shaman off guard. Damn it, amidst the shrill screams, the Dark Blood Divine Shaman's broken body was on the verge of being completely destroyed. He was badly mutilated and looked extremely miserable. Puff! With a flash of the wings of Burning God, Lin Sun had already arrived in front of the Dark Blood Holy Shaman. He raised the saber in his hand and completely minced the Dark Blood Holy Shaman's broken body and spirit. At the same time, Little Silver dashed out and used the innate power of the God-devouring bug bloodline to completely wipe out the Dark Blood Divine Shaman's shattered primordial spirit, leaving nothing behind. All of this seemed to be slow, yet it actually came to an end in an instant. When Yo Tunshin and the others came to their senses, they saw a rain of blood pouring down from the sky, and the sorrowful voice of the Tao once again rang out in the sky. The Dark Blood Divine Shaman had fallen. In the distance, Lin Sun's figure was tall and straight, holding the insignificance bow made of white bones. A pair of black burning god wings flashed behind him, making him look like a demon that didn't belong to the world. Neo Tunshin and the others shivered as if they had fallen into an ice cave. Their morale and fighting spirit had completely collapsed. They couldn't imagine that two true saints would be defeated and killed so easily. And the opponent was just a young man who had not yet become a saint. This was too horrible. Now it's your turn. Lin Sun's voice rang out in the field. It seemed calm, but it was like a life-threatening note, completely waking Neo Tunshin and the others up from the shock. Run! Without hesitation, they subconsciously chose to escape. Even two true saints had been killed. How could they have the courage to challenge Lin Sun again? But Lin Sun didn't intend to let them go. He waved his sleeve. 3,000 Taishian sword chi, like a dense torrent, swept through the world. The sword chi was as dense as lightning, shooting in all directions. From a distance, the sword chi was like a rainbow, peerless. Without any accident, in just a few breaths, Neo Tunshin, Guang Fucking, and Dark Spirit were all killed. They had struggled, escaped, and begged, but all their efforts were in vain. They were completely killed by the fierce and dense sword chi. The world returned to silence, and the previous peace was restored. Lin Sun took a long breath and suddenly felt exhausted. His vision darkened, and he staggered, almost falling from the void. He quickly took out a magical medicine and began to chew it to replenish his strength. Although the forbidden death was so powerful that it could be said to be against the natural order, it almost completely drained his spirit in this short moment. Coupled with the continuous use of insignificant bow and blue arrow, it could be imagined how much Lin Sun's physical strength was consumed. Fortunately, nothing unexpected happened. After a little recovery, Lin Sun cleaned up the spoils and disappeared from the battlefield in a flash. A quarter of an hour later, Lin Sun hid in an underground cave and began to meditate quietly. This battle seemed to be under control, but for Lin Sun, it was of great significance. This was because he had relied on his own strength to kill two true sages. Even though they were already heavily injured, they were still sages. For the strong under the Saint Realm was like a natural moat. Since ancient times, there had almost never been a thing like Lin Sun killing a saint across the realm. It was also this battle that let Lin Sun know how strong his current combat power was. More importantly, he understood the terrible power of the forbidden death. According to Lin Sun's speculation, if used properly, it should not be a problem to kill an uninjured true saint with the power of the forbidden death. 2 days later, Lin Sun, who had completely recovered his strength, left for the outside of the mulberry forest. The gray mist that originally enveloped the mulberry forest disappeared completely. The scene between heaven and earth was extremely clear, but it seemed extremely barren and lifeless. Along the way, Lin Sun found the skeletons of some horrible creatures. Obviously, they had died not long ago. Most of them died in a disaster, and there was still a trace of the terrifying power of the forbidden disaster left in the corpses. Only then did Lin Sun realize that it wasn't that there were no great saints or king saints in the mulberry forest. It was because the 3 forbidden disasters in the purgatory of 10,000 tribulations had also affected the terrifying creatures in the mulberry forest. The bloodthirsty battlefield is the place where the emperor of 10,000 tribulations died, and it is also the place where he laid out his plan. Now that a great opportunity has come to an end, this place has also lost the power it used to have. Lin Sun was lost in thought. In the bloodthirsty battlefield, Mount Song Cloud. Brother Lin is back. Seeing Lin Sun's figure in the distance, a strong man of the Empire station in front of the camp gate shouted excitedly. Then, the whole Mount Song Cloud was boiling. Many figures rushed out, including bloodthirsty Queen Zhao Xingye, Shi Yu, Ning Ming, Li Duxing, Yi Qi, Gong Ming. Every single familiar face carried a wisp of a heartfelt smile, and they were extremely excited. When Lin Sun saw this scene, he couldn't help feeling warm in his heart. However, when he shifted his gaze toward a certain area, he was immediately taken aback. In that area, there stood a beautiful figure. She was a woman dressed as a man. Her figure was graceful, her eyebrows were picturesque, and her smile was sweet. She exuded a pure and beautiful charm. Beside him stood an extremely handsome young man in a green robe. They were Zhao Jingxian and Old Toad. "Why are you here?" Lin Sun was surprised and rushed over. Old Toad shook his head and sighed. "Alas, do you think I want to come here? It's because Miss Jingxian is worried about your safety." Before he finished his words, he was kicked away by Zhao Jingxian. "Are you worried about me?" Lin Sun's eyes were bright. He looked at the beautiful woman beside him and saw her eyes were clear as water. Her cheeks were slightly flushed, revealing a touch of indescribable charm. "There are so many people here. Don't talk nonsense." Zhao Jingxian glared at him fiercely and said angrily, "This time I have something urgent to talk to you about." "What's the matter?" Lin Sun was surprised. "Child Lin, long time no see." Suddenly, a strand of rain of light sprayed down from the sky, and it transformed into a young girl in a yellow dress with a graceful figure. Her black eyebrows were curved, her chin was pointed, her eyes were crystal clear, and her appearance was as beautiful as a fairy. There was a trace of a playful smile on her lips. "Miss Ahu." Lin Sun was stunned at first, and then he suddenly recognized the girl in a light yellow dress in front of him. She was the mysterious girl who gave him a vast universe arc when he left the ultimate ruins and helped him, an old toad, avoid the pursuit of a group of old monsters in the King Realm. It turns out that child still remembers me. Ahu smiled. She had a delicate and beautiful face. Her dress fluttered in the wind, outlining her graceful snow-white body. Although they hadn't seen each other for many years, Lin Sun was still amazed when he saw Ahu at this time. She had a very unique kind of beauty. Her temperament was otherworldly, like a fairy that didn't eat the food of the mortal world. However, her figure was graceful, with exquisite curves and a small waist that could be grasped with one hand. She also had an indescribable charm. Especially when she smiled, her big eyes were intelligent, and her red lips were moist. She was breathtakingly beautiful. Lin Sun smiled and said, "If it weren't for Miss Ahu's help, it would have been difficult for me to leave the soul Oblivion Sea safely." With that, they came to the top of the mountain under the leadership of Zhao Xingye. Everyone could see that Ahu had something to discuss with Lin Sun, so they all left tacitly. Calamity Emperor's plan has come to fruition. I wonder if Child is ready to go to the 9 Regions battlefield? In the stone house where Lin Sun practiced in seclusion, Ahu said with a smile. Her starry eyes were full of hope, and her white and beautiful face was ethereal. "Are you here for the 9 Regions battle this time?" Lin Sun asked with a thought. Oh nodded and said, "Yes." "Speaking of which, I want to ask you for a favor." Lin Sun said, Miss Ahu, please tell me. As long as I can do it, I won't refuse. Chapter 1489. Flying Immortal Token. Lin Sun immediately remembered that he had obtained a flying immortal token from Lin Wenjun, who came from the Qingqiu Heavenly Fox lineage, not long after he entered the ancient wasteland for the first time. It was a secret treasure left behind by the ancestor of the Qingqiu Heavenly Fox lineage. It was related to the Kunlun ruins, one of the 4 ancient Tao ruins. It was priceless. One should know that the Kunlun ruins was extremely mysterious and ethereal. It was rumored to be related to the true immortal and eternal path. It hid opportunities and treasures that were enough to make any sage go crazy. According to Lin Wenjun, there were a total of 9 flying immortal tokens in the world. One was in the hands of the Qingqiu Heavenly Fox, one was in the hands of the Black Sea Dog tribe, and one was in the hands of the ancient orthodoxy Fahua, Pure Land in the Dongsheng world. As for the other flying immortal tokens, no one knew who held them. Is it this thing? Lin Sun flipped his palm, and a palm-sized token that looked like it was polished from white jade appeared. It was suffused with wisps of light green halo. One could vaguely see that the inside of the token was enshrouded with immortal qi and a rain of light. It was filled with a kind of sacred charm, looking extremely mysterious and extraordinary. Ahu was very surprised, and her pair of watery eyes flashed with a strange splendor. You actually have a flying immortal token in your hands. That's easy. The thing I want to ask for your help is related to the flying immortal token. Before Lin Sun could ask, Ahu said, the flying immortal token is related to the Kunlun ruins, one of the 4 ancient god ruins. Only with this token can one have the chance to enter the Kunlun ruins. Among the 9 regions, other than the ancient desolation region, the other 8 regions also have 9 flying immortal tokens. In other words, there are a total of 81 flying immortal tokens in this world. Before the Battle of the 9 Regions broke out, these flying immortal tokens were useless because only when the Battle of the 9 Regions broke out would one have the chance to enter the Kunlun ruins in the battlefield between the 9 regions. But you also know that the Battle of the 9 Territories has only broken out twice since the Archaeozoic era. The first time was before the end of the Archaeozoic era. The Battle of the 9 Territories caused the ancient desolation to completely decline. Since then, the path of cultivation has ceased to exist. The 3 great taboo calamities turned into an invisible shackle that covered the sky of the ancient desolation. The second Battle of the 9 Regions happened before the end of the ancient era. The other 8 regions invaded and a great war broke out. From then on, the ancient desolation region was broken into 4 regions: Eastern Victory Region, Western Horizontal Region, Southern Profound Region, and Northern Dipper Region. After every battle between the 9 regions, the Kunlun ruins will appear once. Only those who possess the flying immortal token have the opportunity to enter. And in this world, it won't be long before the 3rd Battle of the 9 Regions begins. Hearing this, Lin Sun couldn't help feeling surprised. It was the first time he knew that the Battle of the 9 Regions was actually related to the Kunlun ruins. It was unbelievable. Lin Sun could not help but ask, what exactly is hidden in the Kunlun ruins? Why would it appear in the 9 regions battlefield? Ahu thought for a moment and said, you should know that in the beginning, the ancient desolation region was powerful enough to rank first in the 9 regions. At that time, the forces and cultivators of the other 8 regions could only bow down to the ancient desolation region. But do you know why the ancient desolation region declined so quickly? Lin Sun frowned. Isn't it related to the Battle of the 9 Regions? Ahu said, of course it's related to the Battle of the 9 Regions. But do you know what the Battle of the 9 Regions is about? Lin Sun's heart skipped a beat. Is it the opportunity to enter the Kunlun ruins? Ahu nodded. That's right. In the first 2 Battle of the 9 Regions, the ancient desolation region, which was originally extremely powerful, was suppressed by the other 8 regions. It suffered a crushing defeat and lost the opportunity to enter the Kunlun ruins. It was also because of these 2 crushing defeats that the ancient desolation region was unable to recover and has been declining to this day. It has become a bottom-ranked region in the eyes of the other 8 regions. On the other hand, the other 8 regions have seized the opportunity to enter the Kunlun ruins in the Battle of the 9 regions. Their foundations and strength have become more and more powerful in these countless years. At the end of his sentence, Ahu could not help but sigh. Lin Sun was stunned. He really could not imagine that just because of the 2 Battle of the 9 regions, and just because they did not seize the opportunity to enter the Kunlun ruins, it would have such a huge impact on the ancient Desolation region. You asked me what's hidden in the Kunlun ruins and how it can affect the situation of the 9 regions. It's actually very simple. At this moment, Ahu took a deep breath and explained the reason. Anyone who enters Kunlun and returns can become an emperor. Become an emperor. Lin Sun's body trembled as he completely understood. If one had the chance to become an emperor after entering the Kunlun ruins, it could be foreseen that in the last 2 Battle of the 9 regions, the powerhouses from the other 8 regions who had seized the opportunity to enter the Kunlun ruins would definitely have a large number of Emperor Stage existences in these endless years. An Emperor Stage powerhouse had the supreme power to look down on the heavens and roar proudly in the void. It was enough to affect the rise and fall of a world, let alone a group of Emperor Stage powerhouses. There were a total of 81 flying immortal tokens in the world, which meant that 81 powerhouses had the chance to enter the Kunlun ruins. If they could return safely from the Kunlun ruins, wouldn't it mean that in the future, as long as they didn't encounter any mishaps, there would be 81 Emperor Stage powerhouses? When the other 8 regions had more and more Emperor Stage powerhouses, how could the ancient Desolation region fight against them? It was no wonder that it had declined to such a state. Entering the Kunlun ruins and returning gives one the chance to become an emperor in the future. It's just like obtaining the qualification to become an emperor on the path of seeking the Great Tao. One can imagine how magical the Kunlun ruins is. A hint of longing appeared in Ahu's eyes as he sighed emotionally. The other 8 regions seized the opportunity, and their strength and foundation rose steadily. On the other hand, the ancient Desolation region missed the opportunity and fell into continuous decline. For example, the 3 great taboo calamities that enveloped the ancient Desolation region appeared after the first Battle of the 9 regions. However, Ahu changed the topic. It won't be long before the 3rd Battle of the 9 regions begins. This time, it's different from before. A group of top figures has appeared in the ancient Desolation region. Although their foundation is still weak compared to the powerhouses of the other 8 regions, they still have some foundation to fight. And the favor I want to ask you is related to entering the Kunlun ruins. At this point, Ahu looked at Lin Sun. It's not enough to have the Flying Immortal token. You also need to collect battle merits and Tao luck in the 9 regions battlefield. When you collect 1,000 types of battle merits and Tao luck, you can activate a Tao pattern in the Flying Immortal token and embark on the path to enter the Kunlun ruins. What are battle merits and Tao luck? Lin Sun asked. It's very simple. Kill the enemy. Ahu said, killing the opponent will allow you to seize the opponent's Tao luck. It's like a merit that is collected in the Flying Immortal token. However, weak opponents don't have Tao luck at all. Only 2 types of people have battle merits and Tao luck. One is those talented and powerful geniuses, and the other is those who have become saints. This also means that if you want to collect battle merits and Tao luck, you have to kill geniuses or saints. Moreover, the number is extremely shocking. In the past 2 9 regions battles, in order to collect battle merits and Tao luck, the most outstanding powerhouses in the ancient Desolation region were almost all captured by the other 8 regions. The losses were so heavy that you can't imagine it. When Lin Sun heard this, he already understood. Those who could enter the 9 regions battlefield were almost all the most outstanding powerhouses in each region. They had an extremely bright future. If they were killed, it would be equivalent to wiping out the most promising batch of cultivation seeds in the ancient Desolation region. And without this batch of cultivation seeds that could lead the trend in the future, how could the ancient Desolation region rise? It was no wonder that after the 2 9 regions battles, the ancient Desolation region would decline to such a state in the endless years. It was also because of the arrival of this great era that a group of young people who had become kings rose. Otherwise, once the 9 regions battle broke out, the ancient Desolation region would not have the qualifications to compete with the other 8 regions. And what I want you to help me with is to give me a flying immortal token that can collect 1,000 kinds of battle merits and Dao luck. At this moment, Ahu took a deep breath and said seriously, I know this is very difficult, and even the hope is extremely slim. But if I don't fight for it, I won't give up. Then she said, however, I won't let young Master Lin work for nothing. Regardless of whether you succeed or not, I'll give you something that'll allow you to obtain an unexpected benefit after entering the Kunlun ruins. Lin Sun was silent for a moment before he said with a smile, back then, you helped me escape from the Soul Oblivion Sea and even gave me a vast universe arc, allowing me to escape danger time and time again. Now that you've asked, I will naturally do my best. As for the reward, there's no need to mention it. Ahu's eyes lit up, and she said with a smile, just this sentence alone makes this trip worthwhile for me. That night, Zhao Xingye held a banquet to entertain Ahu, Zhao Jingxian, Old Toad, and the others. Big Brother, Ahu's background is very mysterious. After I returned to the burial sea tomb, she found me and gave me some pointers, allowing me to find some news and clues related to my background. At the banquet, Old Toad drank as he quickly sent a voice transmission. Later, she gave Miss Zhao some pointers. In a mystic realm near the sinkhole, Miss Zhao obtained a fortuitous encounter that allowed her strength to advance by leaps and bounds. It can be said that both Miss Zhao and I owe her a big favor. But the strange thing is, I still don't know why she did this. After hearing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but be surprised. After thinking for a moment, he vaguely understood that Ahu's purpose for doing this was probably related to the help she wanted from him. After all, he was not the only one who could participate in the Battle of the 9 Regions. Zhao Jingxian and Old Toad also had the opportunity to participate. At the end of the banquet, Lin Sun knew that Ahu had come to take him, Zhao Jingxian, and Old Toad back to the ancient desolation, because she had a secret map of the route to the ancient desolation, which was enough for Lin Sun and the others to cross the world barrier and enter the ancient desolation again. Knowing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but be shocked. This Miss Ahu was really not simple. Goldfish returned to Beijing yesterday and rushed all the way home tonight. She was exhausted both physically and mentally. Tonight, there would be a temporary break for Goldfish to take a rest and catch her breath. Then, she would start to prepare for more updates and more updates. Chapter 1490. It was time to leave. In the night, Lin Sun was alone, lying on the top of a vigorous old pine tree on the edge of the cliff at the top of the mountain. He rested his head on his arms in a lazy manner. The mountain wind blew, lifting his clothes and long black hair. In the distance, the sea of clouds was rolling and steaming under the night starlight. All was quiet. The 2 major forces, the Voodoo Barbarian Camp and the Alliance of 10,000 Races, had already collapsed and ceased to exist. The great opportunity in the mulberry forest had also come to an end. Zhao Yuanji and others had all got what they wanted. They left for the ancient road in the starry sky with the young man with golden cicada. Even the 2 sages, Neo Jinyu and Dark Blood Holy Shaman, had been killed. For Lin Sun, the 3 paths of body refining, chi refining, and soul refining had all reached the level of the 9th retribution of longevity. He successfully broke through the Forbidden Tao test and completely swept away all the obstacles before becoming a sage. Thinking about it carefully, it was indeed time to leave this trip to the bloodthirsty battlefield. However, Lin Sun was a little disappointed. He took out the wine gourd and took a sip on the treetop on the edge of the cliff. Lin Sun was a little worried about his relatives and friends in Heart-Cleansing Peak. This time, he would return to the ancient Desolation territory to participate in the Battle of 9 Regions. He didn't know when he would return again. Fortunately, before I came to the bloodthirsty battlefield, I had arranged everything properly. As long as I am alive, Lin family will never be destroyed after a long time, Lin Sun murmured in his heart. In the depths of his eyes, there was a touch of calmness and firmness flashing. This was the way to seek Tao. The higher one went, the farther he went, the farther he would be from the fetters of the past. In the night, the camp of Cloud Mountain was brightly lit. The noisy and lively voice filled the air. Many people gathered together, drinking and chatting. This time, without Child Lin's efforts, how could our imperial camp have the chance to sweep away the decline and destroy the other two camps? It's so exciting. When I return to the Empire this time, I must publicize Child Lin's great achievements and let all the people in the world remember his name. Yes, Child Lin is our great benefactor. In the future, whoever dares to be an enemy of heart-cleansing Peak Lin in the Empire will be against us. Hearing these comments, Lin Sun couldn't help but smile. Then he raised his head and drank up the wine in the pot. Then he got up from the treetop and landed on the ground. Since it wasn't a separation of life and death, it naturally wasn't a true separation. After leaving this time, there would naturally be a time when they would meet again in the future. With his hands behind his back, Lin Sun turned around and entered his room. The next morning, under the gazes of Zhao Xingye, Shi Yu, Ning Meng, Li Duxing, Yi Qi, and other powerful figures of the Empire, Ahu drove a green lotus boat, carrying Lin Sun, Zhao Jingxian, and Old Toad through the void. Take care. The eyes of Shi Yu and the others couldn't help but flash with a trace of sadness and disappointment. Who knew when they would be able to meet again after this parting? Take care. Zhao Xingye's expression carried a hint of anticipation. She firmly believed that with Lin's background and talent, his future achievements were bound to be limitless. Take care. The Empire's experts in the camp were filled with mixed emotions. Being acquainted with Lin Sun was destined to be a rich and colorful stroke in their cultivation lives. It was like a brand that could not be forgotten. Take care. Lin Sun also said silently in his heart. This time, he was going to the ancient Desolation territory for the competition of the 9 regions and to become a sage. Dongsheng World, ancient Desolation territory in a vast and majestic mountain. Buzz, accompanied by a strange fluctuation of the void suddenly exploded like a piece of cloth being torn apart. Then a green lotus boat broke through the void. I'm back again. Looking around, Old Toad felt the aura of the law of heaven and earth, which was completely different from that in the mortal world. He immediately beamed with joy and laughed. Lin Sun and Zhao Jingxian looked at each other and smiled. They were indeed back. Thinking about it, they had originally planned to spend 10 years in the mortal world to concentrate on cultivation, but the plan couldn't keep up with the changes. Now, only 2 years had passed, and they stepped into the ancient Desolation territory again. Everyone, I can only send you here. Ahu spoke abruptly. She wore a light yellow dress, had curved black brows, a jade-white body, and watery eyes that were large and charming. Moreover, her pure and holy aura added a soul-stirring charm to her. Are you going back to the mortal world? Lin Sun was surprised. Yes, when the competition of the 9 regions comes to an end, I will come to see you again. Ahu nodded with a smile. She handed a flying fairy token to Lin Sun and said, Goodbye, everyone. As soon as she finished speaking, she steered the azure lotus boat and tore through the sky. This Miss Ahu is really a mysterious and strange woman. Zhao Jingxian said thoughtfully. Lin Sun nodded. This Ahu is really mysterious. From the first time they met in the Soul Oblivion Sea, Lin Sun felt that he couldn't see through her. Her beauty was like an otherworldly fairy, but she also had a fatal charm, like a devil who could bring disaster to a country and people. His way of doing things was also very unexpected, causing others to be unable to guess or understand him. But Lin Sun was sure that she didn't have any hostility, which was enough. Big brother, should we go? Old Toad rubbed his hands and looked expectant. I don't know how the ancient Desolation territory has changed in the past 2 years. Among those who entered the Absolute Summit territory with us, has anyone stepped into the Sage Realm? Let's go and have a look. Lin Sun smiled. This time returning to the ancient Desolation territory, Lin Sun was very relaxed. Before the start of the competition of the 9 regions, he only needed to calm down and sharpen his cultivation. Immediately, the group of people set out. In the following period of time, Lin Sun, Zhao Jingxian, and Old Toad traveled to some famous mountains and rivers. The places they went had a great history, such as some scenic spots and historical sites in the Dongxing territory, holy places for cultivation, and some legendary famous mountains and rivers. Occasionally, they would enter different cities to listen and understand all kinds of news in the world. Now, that Lin Sun's cultivation was in the 9 retribution of longevity. If he wanted to become a sage, he couldn't just rely on hard work. Traveling and comprehending between the world's mountains and rivers was greatly beneficial to his cultivation. The beauty of heaven and earth didn't need words. Only by seeing more can one know more. To become a sage, in addition to the perfection of one's own cultivation, one also needed to sublimate and sharpen his state of mind, spirit, and will. Famous mountains and rivers were unworldly places where one could comprehend the way to come out of the world. The boundless secular world was a secular place where one could comprehend the way to enter the world. Be it coming out of the world or entering the world, both had different benefits to cultivation. Over the past few days, Lin Sun and the others had traveled between mountains and rivers and walked in the secular world. They were used to the beauty of heaven and earth and the various forms of the mortal world. Their cultivation also underwent a rare consolidation during such travels. They only ended their travels several months later, because unknowingly they had approached the star-chest sea. The star-chest sea was set up with the heavenly cycle stars formation. After crossing this sea, they would reach the famous Undying Mountain. Back then, the minor giants' ranking battle had begun at the Undying Mountain. Similarly, the Undying Mountain was also an entrance to the 9 regions battlefield. Big Brother, I've recently gained many insights and wish to cultivate in the star-chest sea for a period of time. Old Toad suddenly said at the shore of the star-chest sea. Back then, he, Lin Sun, and Alu had once cultivated in the star-chest sea. To them, the star-chest sea was like their home in the ancient desolation territory. Lin Sun nodded in agreement. The star-chest sea was enveloped by the heavenly cycle stars formation. To other cultivators, it was a forbidden ground that they did not dare to enter. However, to Lin Sun, the heavenly cycle stars formation was a layer of protection that he could control. After Old Toad stayed behind, Lin Sun and Zhao Jingxian set off once again. They headed for the numinous treasure, Sacred Lands, Mabai Province. I've already set foot in the longevity 9th tribulation realm and am qualified to take the proving holiness test of the sect. If I can pass it, I'll be able to obtain a supreme legacy. This legacy is very helpful to my cultivation. I don't want to miss it. Zhao Jingxian explained along the way. Lin Sun nodded. Do you want me to accompany you? Zhao Jingxian pursed her lips and smiled. Forget it. If those old monsters of the sect discover you, they'll definitely be enraged and start a massacre. Lin Sun could not help but laugh. Speaking of which, the numinous treasure Sacred Land was not the only ancient orthodoxy that hated Lin Sun in the ancient desolation territory. In the past, he might have been wary of such things. However, his mental state was no longer the same now. Of course, some hatred was destined to be insignificant. Lin Sun believed that if he really appeared in front of the numinous treasure Sacred Land, those old monsters would definitely kill him immediately. How about this? I'll go to the star-chest sea to find you after I obtain the legacy from the sect. Zhao Jingxian said after thinking for a while. Lin Sun naturally had no objections. He said, all right, but before that, let me send you off. I'll leave when we reach the Mabai province. It was also at this time that they heard some rumors. They were shocked that there was another wave in the ancient desolation territory. An envoy from the blood demon ancient territory has crossed the territory barrier and arrived in the ancient desolation territory. He's now a guest in the divine secret pavilion of the Saint Hermit grounds. Blood demon ancient territory. This was one of the other 8 territories. Lin Sun and Zhao Jingxian were both shocked. As far as they knew, be it the Blood Demon Ancient Territory or the other territories, they were all enemies of the Ancient Desolation Territory. There was a blood feud that could not be resolved. Now, an envoy from the Blood Demon Ancient Territory had actually arrived. This was extremely rare. What are these foreign enemies going to do by sending envoys here? Lin Sun frowned. He vaguely sensed that a wave was about to set off in the Ancient Desolation Territory. In the past, there were no signs of foreign enemies appearing in the Ancient Desolation Territory. After that, Lin Sun and the others continued to inquire about the news. Soon, they learned that the purpose of the envoy from the Blood Demon Ancient Territory was very likely related to the Battle of the 9 Territories. Unfortunately, there was no other news other than that. When they arrived at the Mabai province, Lin Sun personally saw Zhao Jingxian return to the numinous treasure, Sacred Land. Then, he turned around and floated away. He planned to continue walking around. However, not long after Lin Sun left the Mabai province, an extremely sensational news came out from the Divine Secret Pavilion of the Saint Hermit Grounds, causing a huge uproar in the Ancient Desolation Territory. I'm going to start writing about the Battle of the 9 Territories, which is also the most crucial plot for Lin Sun to become a saint. There are so many clues that it's taking me longer to write. Chapter 1491. One of the messengers of the Blood Demon Ancient region, a peerless figure called Lang Qianheng, wanted to challenge all the powerhouses in the Ancient Desolation. When this news came out, the entire Ancient Desolation was in an uproar. What a reckless and arrogant person. This was the first reaction of most people. He was just one person, but he dared to say that he wanted to challenge all the top figures in the world. This attitude was too arrogant, and he obviously didn't take the Ancient Desolation seriously. Since this news came from the Divine Secret Pavilion, it can't be fake. Since Lang Qianheng dares to be so arrogant, he must have something to rely on. I'm very worried that if the top figures of the Ancient Desolation perform badly and lose to this person, it won't just be a humiliation, it will also have a great impact on the morale of the Ancient Desolation. There were also many people who were deeply worried. As the messenger of the Blood Demon Ancient region, how could Lang Qianheng be an arrogant and ignorant person? Since he dared to make such a threat, he must have absolute confidence. Lin Sun was stunned when he heard this news, and he thought in his heart, the Battle of the 9 Regions hasn't even begun, yet the emissary of the Blood Demon Ancient region has come to flaunt his strength. No matter what his motive is, at the bottom of it all, he obviously looks down on the peerless figures of the Ancient Desolation region. What interested Lin Sun was what kind of person Lang Qianheng was. How strong did he have to be to dare to make such a challenge? If it was someone else, Lin Sun couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him. But Lang Qianheng was different. He came from the Blood Demon Ancient region, one of the 8 regions. This naturally attracted Lin Sun's attention. When the Battle of the 9 Regions started in the future, he was destined to fight with such enemies. If he could know more about them in advance, it would naturally not be a bad thing. Forget it. I'll wait for a while and see how capable this guy is. Lin Sun shook his head and no longer paid attention to these things. He continued to travel the world alone. He was very relaxed and empty, like a passerby who was experiencing the beauty of all things in the world and the wonders of the mortal world. Up until now, all his cultivation had reached the peak of the path to immortality. There was only one hurdle in front of him, becoming a sage. It was merely 2 words. It was like a natural chasm that had obstructed the paths of countless cultivators since the ancient times until now. And Lin Sun's path to sainthood was different from that of others. He cultivated 3 kinds of peerless ways at the same time. So the peak of the saint realm he wanted to reach was naturally different from others. This path was extremely difficult to tread. It couldn't be said to be covered in thistles and thorns, but it could be said to be different from the world, different from the masses. There were great unknowns, and the unknown often meant great terror and great danger. However, Lin Sun's state of mind was not affected by this. His previous cultivation experience had already tempered his will and state of mind to be as tough as a rock. His Taoist heart was like a sword that could cut the sun, moon, ghosts, and gods. So, it was impossible for him to be afraid of the hardships and dangers ahead. On this day, like an ordinary tourist, Lin Sun walked into a bustling tea house full of market atmosphere, ordered a cup of hot tea, and began to enjoy it. The mortal world represented the myriad of living beings, and it flowed with an aura that belonged to the boundless mortal world. Only by entering the mortal world would one understand the meaning of the word living beings. Lin Sun turned his hand and took out a bronze box about the size of a palm, which was like a heavy bronze flying sword, exuding a vast and mysterious aura. This was the saint's guide that Lin Sun obtained in the domain of extinction, which was given by Taishian Sword Emperor. What was sealed in it was the experience and understanding of becoming a saint. Not long ago, Lin Sun began to study this object. He knew that the saint's guide sealed in this bronze box was the complete understanding of Taishian Sword Emperor and Wuyang War Emperor, two great figures who had become emperors in primitive times when they were at their peak. Although it was just some experience and understanding, its value was immeasurable. After all, Taishian Sword Emperor was known as the first sword emperor in the primitive times. He was a supreme figure who had led the world in the primitive times. And Wuyang War Emperor was not inferior to him. If the ancient orthodoxies and the ancient desolation realm knew the experience and understanding of Saint's Guide left by the two emperors, they would definitely be crazy enough to take it away from Lin Sun at all costs. These days, when Lin Sun was free, he would comprehend and figure out the essence of Saint's Guide, which benefited him a lot. It also made him more and more clear and firm about his pursuit of the path of Saint's Guide. In the primitive times, the path of extinction still existed. Like Taishian Sword Emperor, he rose to the top with Sword Tao and became a sword sage. His Sword Tao was in the word Taishian. Like Wuyang War Emperor, she took a different path. She proved her Tao by force and became a saint by killing. Her Tao was to stop war by killing. Stopping war meant no disaster. Lin Sun often felt enlightened by observing the two's experience of becoming saints. Lin Sun now knew that although ordinary true saints had the power to preach to the world and establish a sect, they did not have the foundation to support them to this step. The most important thing was that it was almost impossible for ordinary true saints to touch the threshold of the Emperor realm in their lifetime. Only those who became saints at the top could have these foundations. In addition, in this Saint's Guide, there were also some experiences and preparations made by the two emperors when they became saints in detail. It couldn't be said to be obscure or difficult, but it made Lin Ping feel as if the clouds were dispelling and the sun was suddenly awakened. He was deeply inspired. The tea house was very lively, with people from all walks of life gathered. Lin Sun sat among them, sipping tea and understanding the mystery recorded in the Saint's Guide, which was not conspicuous. Defeated again. This time, a supreme figure of the Sun Moon Divine Hall was defeated by Lang Qianheng. The outcome of the battle was decided in 10 moves. This is already the 13th supreme figure that has been defeated by Lang Qianheng. Suddenly, a strong man of Wind tribe hurried into the tea house and sighed, causing an uproar among the people present. What? In less than half a month, so many peerless figures have been defeated? Some people found it unbelievable. Is Lang Qianheng really so powerful? I heard that none of the peerless figures who fought with him could last 10 moves. My God, isn't it too terrible? How powerful are the peerless figures of our ancient desolation realm? How could they be so weak? Everyone was talking about it. Some were angry, some were surprised, and some couldn't believe it. Only Lin Sun looked as calm as before. He'd heard of this information in the past, and he even knew that those peak figures that lost at the hands of Lang Qianheng couldn't be said to be very dazzling in the extinction domain all those years ago. And it was even to the extent that they weren't able to be ranked in the ranks of the Genius Gold rankings. In Lin Sun's view, these people were defeated by Lang Qianheng. Although it was unacceptable for the practitioners in the ancient desolation realm, it was reasonable. It would be surprising if Lang Qianheng, who dared to challenge all the peerless figures in the ancient desolation realm, was weak. Before long, Lin Sun got up and floated away. At present, Lang Qianheng's performance still couldn't arouse his interest and fighting spirit. As time went by, Lin Sun traveled around the world, meditating at night, watching the beauty of mountains and rivers on the top of mountains, experiencing the appearance of all living beings in the mortal world, or concentrating on figuring out the mystery of the Saint's Guide at the same time. The waves caused by Lang Qianheng became more and more turbulent, and he received more and more attention. A month passed. Lang Qianheng defeated all his opponents and was invincible. He fought 37 battles, big and small, and never lost. He was so powerful and arrogant that it made people speechless. Even Lin Sun couldn't help but notice it, because almost all the cities he went to were discussing and analyzing Lang Qianheng's achievements. It was no exaggeration to say that the whole ancient desolation realm couldn't be calm. Many practitioners felt ashamed and couldn't lift their heads. A foreign enemy came to the ancient desolation realm, but no one could stop him. He defeated many peerless figures, which was a big blow to people. Even some old monsters started to worry, because the Battle of the Nine Regions was coming. Lang Qianheng alone was already so powerful. If all the peerless figures from the other 8 regions appeared together, how could the experts in ancient desolation region be a match for them? Oh no, even Yin Zhanxiu, who has the strength of the 9th retribution of longevity in the spiritual treasure Holy Land, was defeated. When this news came out, Lin Sun had just arrived at Qianlu City in the Purple Moon province of the Dongxing world. As soon as he entered the city, he heard a lot of discussion on the way. This time, Lin Sun finally had a little interest. He was very clear about Yin Zhanxiu's background and talent. Although he couldn't compare with peerless figures like Xiao Hao, Fairy Ruowu, Yuan Fatian, and Mingzi, he was still a first-class figure among the peerless figures. However, Yin Zhanxiu was defeated as well, and he was defeated within 10 moves. From this, it could be inferred that Lang Qianheng, who came from the blood demon ancient domain, should be an overlord-like existence in terms of achievements in the absolute Tao. However, it was only a little interest. Lang Qianheng's performance was not enough to make Lin Sun have a desire to understand him. On the bustling street, Lin Sun was wandering. He had been to Qianlu City before. The Qianlu Grand Gathering was held on the Qianlu Mountain in the city. That grand gathering was organized by Mi Hongjin, who invited a group of young geniuses to discuss and learn from each other. After so many years, coming to this city again could be considered as revisiting an old place. Hey, it's so lively here. When passing by the Qianlu Mountain, Lin Sun saw many gorgeous chariots and extraordinary mounts parked in front of the foot of the mountain. At first glance, he could tell that their owners were extremely extraordinary. On top of the mountain, many figures could be seen gathering there. Seeing Lin Sun standing here, in front of the Qianlu Mountain, a beautiful woman suddenly came over and asked, "Child, are you also here to participate in the Qianlu Grand Gathering?" Qianlu Grand Gathering? Lin Sun was stunned. He didn't expect that after so many years, there would be a similar grand gathering held on the Qianlu Mountain. The beautiful woman said, "Child, this grand gathering is led by Yi Tianlin, a top master of the Origin sect. The discussion is about Lang Qianheng. Haven't you heard of it?" Chapter 1492. But in the end, Lin Sun nodded and agreed. He was traveling around the world, so it was okay for him to participate in a grand meeting. "Child, please." The pretty girl smiled sweetly. At this time, Lin Sun noticed that the pretty girl in front of him was quite beautiful. She was petite and lovely, with big watery eyes and moist and white skin, which was quite eye-catching. The pretty girl took the initiative to lead the way in front. Lin Sun smiled and didn't say much. Now, although his breath was as plain as a flowing cloud, his bearing, which had been cultivated through many years of cultivation, was as outstanding as an abyss and a mountain, which suppressed all the other practitioners nearby. This was one of the reasons why the pretty girl was so enthusiastic and active. "Child, my name is Xia Wei, and I come from Green Toon Sword Sect in Bottle Province." On the way, Xia Wei blinked her big eyes and asked happily, What about you? Lin Sun said casually, the name is not important. If we meet again in the future, we will know each other. It was not that he deliberately concealed his identity, but once his identity was exposed, it was bound to attract a lot of unnecessary attention. In this way, he was afraid that he would steal the limelight of the host who organized this grand meeting. What's more, he just came to have a look. Then you should also be a peerless figure, right? Xiaowei asked curiously. Lin Sun nodded. Seeing him admit it, Xiaowei's watery eyes suddenly brightened, and she said, No wonder I think you are so extraordinary. It turns out that you have entered the absolute summit domain. Those who can enter the absolute summit domain are all peerless figures, such as Prince Xiaohao, Fairy Ruawu, Yuan Fatian, Little Golden-Winged Rock, and many more. There was a trace of admiration between Xiaowei's eyebrows. For example, Yi Tianlin, the host of this Thousand Streams Grand Meeting, has entered the absolute summit domain. Yi Tianlin is very great. His senior brother is the most famous Yi Mo of the Origin sect. By the way, child, do you know them? Xiaowei blinked her big eyes and looked at Lin Sun. Them? Lin Sun was stunned and immediately smiled. There should be few people in this world who don't know them. As they talked, they had already set foot on Thousand Streams Mountain. This mountain stood towering at the center of the city, and it was extremely beautiful. Waterfalls poured down from the peak of the mountain, and it revealed the magnificent spectacle of 1,000 streams racing and a Milky Way flowing in reverse. At this moment, a woman in a purple dress with a graceful figure suddenly appeared in front of them. Xiaowei, who asked you to welcome senior brother Xia Luchuan? The woman in purple said, and looked at Lin Sun suspiciously. This woman had a tall and slender figure. Her gaze was piercingly cold, and her expression was icy cold like frost. Moreover, she carried a haughty and arrogant aura. As expected, Xiaowei's aura immediately weakened by 30%. She stammered, Senior Sister Gu, this young master is also here to participate in the grand meeting. All right, he's also a peerless character. Senior Sister Gu was stunned. Although Lin Sun's breath was calm, his bearing was really extraordinary. She couldn't help showing a trace of hesitation on her face. For example, the Thousand Flow meet this time had invited all the top-notch geniuses in the world, especially people like Yi Tianlin. He was a famous peak longevity tribulation king. If the person in front of her was a peerless figure, she really couldn't neglect him. Thinking of this, Senior Sister Gu was about to say something when suddenly there was a commotion not far away. A silver-robed young man was surrounded by a group of people as he walked up the mountain. Senior brother, Yi Tianlin is here. Quick, get up and welcome him. Haha, I've finally seen senior brother, Yi Tianlin's true appearance. He's indeed a peerless figure from the Origin sect. Immediately, many powerhouses on the mountain were alarmed. They stood up and looked at the silver-robed young man who was surrounded by stars. Seeing this, Senior Sister Gu seemed very excited. She hurriedly instructed, Xiaowei, bring this young master over. As she spoke, she took the initiative to step forward. A bright smile appeared on her originally cold face as she bowed to the silver-robed young man. As for Lin Sun, he was quickly forgotten by her. Young master, don't mind him. One day, you will be like senior brother, Yi Tianlin. After all, you are also a peerless figure with a limitless future. Xiaowei whispered to Lin Sun to cheer him up. Thank you for your kind words. Lin Sun smiled in his heart. With his current vision and experience, how could he care about these things? What amused him was that Xiaowei actually compared him to Yi Tianlin. This really caused him to not know whether to laugh or cry. It should be known that Lin Sun remembered the Prince Xiaohao, Fairy Ruawu, Mingzi, Yi Mo, and so on in the territory of extinction. But Yi Tianlin was not remembered. If he guessed correctly, Yi Tianlin might not even be on the Tianjiao Golden List. However, Lin Sun's current state of mind was indeed different from before. It was not that he didn't bother to pay attention to them, but that he didn't care about these things at all. Xiaowei didn't know what to say. Compared with Yi Tianlin's popularity, Lin Sun, who was also a peerless figure, was a bit dazzling. Let's go. Don't comfort me. I'm just here to have a look and we'll leave soon. Lin Sun smiled. Xiaowei nodded and led the way in front. On the Thousand Flow Mountain, pavilions were built with tables, futons, fruits, tea and wine for the strong who came to participate in the grand meeting to rest. Lin Sun chose a seat near the corner at random and sat down. Then he began to figure out the mystery of the Saint's Guide. Occasionally, he would pay attention to the content of the conversations of other strong people. But most of them were idle chatter, and there was nothing worth paying attention to. Seeing this, Xiaowei was sure that Lin Sun really didn't care about this kind of cold treatment. She secretly breathed a sigh of relief and sat beside Lin Sun at random, pouring wine and tea for him. Lin Sun accepted it calmly and didn't refuse. Having such a charming and beautiful woman pour wine for him was also a pleasing thing to see. Before long, Yi Tianlin and his companions came up, and Yi Tianlin sat on the main seat in the center. As he sat down, the originally lively atmosphere in the field suddenly became quiet, and everyone looked at Yi Tianlin. This treatment of being the center of attention caused Yi Tianlin to be unable to help but lightly smile, and he said in a clear voice, "I've made everyone wait for a long time. The reason why I came late is actually to gather information related to Lang Qianheng." Lang Qianheng. Many people held their breaths. Presently, the person in the limelight in the ancient desolation region was Lang Qianheng, a peerless figure from the blood-fiend ancient region. During this period of time, countless peak figures had lost at his hands, and his combat strength was formidable to the point it caused the hearts of others to tremble. "Brother Yi, could it be that you found out about Lang Qianheng's trump card?" Someone couldn't help but ask. Yi Tianlin nodded. He's from the Nether Spring Devil sect in the Bloodfiend ancient region. He's born with the Nether Devil body, possesses the innate divine ability, the 800 Devil territory, and possesses a cultivation at the 9 Tribulation realm. His treasures are a pair of Sky Devil blades, a pair of peerlessly formidable Saint treasures of the Devil Tao. His disposition is overbearing, proud, and cold, and his combat methods are extremely ferocious and overbearing. If you go against him, then you must go all out. Moreover, according to the analysis of some seniors, Lang Qianheng's combat strength is at least not inferior to the ferocious figures that are ranked in the top 30 of the Genius Gold rankings. As soon as these words were spoken, the surroundings were deathly silent, perfectly silent. The expressions of everyone carried a wisp of seriousness and shock, and their hearts had even become heavy. There was no doubt that Lang Qianheng was absolutely a top figure, and his resources and reserves were formidable to the point it caused one's heart to go cold. Ranked in the top 30 of the Genius Gold rankings? Lin Sun thought for a moment, and he said in his heart, it's around the same level as the Nether Child and Bai Longting from all those years ago. Of course, no one is able to give a clear answer to exactly how strong Lang Qianheng is, because all of you are clearly aware that not a single expert that has fought this person during this period of time has been able to endure 10 moves from him. Yi Tianlin's voice carried a wisp of a heavy tone as well. This also means that if we want to figure out his ability, then we have to at least find a formidable figure that's capable of fighting Lang Qianheng as an equal. The atmosphere in the surroundings grew even quieter. Everyone looked at each other while their hearts felt heavy, and they felt extremely uncomfortable. The Bloodfiend ancient region had always been one of the great enemies of the ancient Desolation region, and a blood enmity that couldn't be resolved had been formed between them in the countless years of the past. But now, Lang Qianheng had crossed realms and descended upon the ancient Desolation region, threatening to challenge all the supreme figures of the ancient Desolation region. This was already infuriating, and it seemed like he was too arrogant and condescending. But recently, along with Lang Qianheng's successive victories, it was like a heavy blow that caused the ancient Desolation region to be in an uproar, and they were somewhat unable to raise their heads. Everyone, there's no need to worry. According to what I know, most of the true supreme figures of our ancient Desolation region are in secluded cultivation to prepare for the Battle of the 9 Realms, and they haven't come out yet. If they were to find out about Lang Qianheng, there would definitely be someone who would stand out. When Yi Tianlin spoke up to hear, he couldn't help but smile lightly. For example, when I came here this time, I heard that senior brother Yemo, he is about to come out of secluded cultivation. Instantly, the spirits of everyone present were refreshed. Yemohi. This was a peerless figure that was as dazzling as the sun in the sky, and he had once made a name for himself in the domain of extinction. If he were to make a move, then perhaps he would be able to fiercely suppress Lang Qianheng's arrogance. However, according to what I know, Lang Qianheng isn't the only emissary that has come to the ancient desolation region this time. Suddenly, someone said. Lang Qianheng nodded. That's right. This is also the second thing I want to tell you. This time, besides Lang Qianheng from the Blood Demon Ancient Realm, there are 7 other peerless figures from the other 7 realms. After a pause, he continued, although we can't know their purpose for coming here, we can be sure that it's definitely not a good thing. For a moment, everyone present had different thoughts. Even Lin Sun was slightly stunned. Only now did he know that among the emissaries that had come to the ancient desolation region this time, Lang Qianheng was not the only peerless figure. The Battle of the 9 Realms was coming, but at this time, experts from the other 8 realms had formed an emissary group and come to the ancient desolation region. What do they want to do? Who cares? We'll deal with it when it comes. Someone said coldly. At this moment, a sneer suddenly came from the foot of the mountain. It seemed to be low, but it clearly resounded in everyone's ears. Chapter 1493. Although it was just a sneer, the strong disdain in the voice couldn't be concealed at all. In other words, the owner of the voice didn't intend to conceal it at all. Etian Lin frowned. Everyone's face darkened. Under everyone's gaze, a black-clothed, red-haired, green-eyed woman with a long and narrow blood sword on her back paced towards them from the mountain road. She was slender and straight, with her blood-red hair tied into a ponytail. Her fair face showed a kind of enchanting beauty, but her expression was too aloof and cold. As she strode forward, an oppressive and sharp aura spread out. It was like an invisible torrent that engulfed the entire place. Immediately, many people changed their expressions and breathed hard. Etienne-Lin's eyes flashed a touch of seriousness. He felt a kind of pressure from this strange and cold woman with a sword on her back. Xia Wei's body stiffened, and her jade-like hand that was pouring wine for Lin trembled. The wine was about to spill, but Lin caught it firmly. Xia Wei suddenly came to her senses and showed a touch of shame. Lin Sun smiled and didn't say anything. Who are you? Are you also coming to participate in the event? Etian Lin stood up and asked in a deep voice. The black-clothed woman with blood-red hair turned a deaf ear to him. She came to the field and then stopped. She crossed her arms over her chest, raised her white chin slightly, and glanced at the people in the field with her green eyes. Immediately, there was a touch of disappointment on her cold face, and she said, I heard that the fellow called demonic God Lin had appeared here many years ago to participate in the Thousand Flow banquet. I originally thought that such a banquet would be filled with experts and geniuses, but now it seems like... What do you think? There was a touch of coldness between Etienne-Lin's eyebrows. He had seen that the woman came with bad intentions. The voice of the black-clothed woman with blood-red hair carried a unique pride. It's nothing more than a group of people bragging together. It's not worthy of its name. It's disappointing. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the field, and many people looked angry. Are you here to make trouble? The woman called senior sister Gu stood up and said coldly. Make trouble? Do you deserve it? The black-clothed, crimson-haired woman said expressionlessly. Since you've mentioned how to deal with the situation, I just want to see which one of you can stop me. Sure enough, he was looking for trouble. Everyone immediately made a judgment. Miss, we're talking about the foreign envoys. Does it have nothing to do with you? What? Could it be that you've surrendered to those enemies and are planning to become a traitor of the ancient desolation realm? Someone shouted angrily. The black-clothed, red-haired woman said with a mocking smile, Countless years have passed. Why haven't the cultivators of the ancient desolation realm made any progress? Can't you recognize your opponent? As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. Are you a foreign cultivator? Etienne-Lin's eyelid twitched. Not bad. My name is Bai Han, and I'm currently serving by Master Lang Qianheng's side. Only now did everyone realize that this woman with an icy cold and fierce aura was actually a servant girl by Lang Qianheng's side. Senior sister Gu snorted coldly and said, "Humph, you're just a maidservant, yet you don't know any etiquette, barging in as you please. Don't you feel ashamed for your master?" Bai Hen said indifferently, "You're not convinced? If you defeat me, I'll immediately kowtow to you and apologize. You can even chop off my head." Her words were calm, but they seemed extremely domineering. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would never have believed that such a beautiful woman with an icy cold aura was just a maidservant. "But if I win, I won't kill you. Whoever loses will kneel on the ground and slap himself in the face, admitting that he's not as good as me." When these words left Bai Hen's mouth, the atmosphere in the surroundings suddenly became oppressive and strained, and a storm was brewing. Many people looked at Yi Tianlin with gloomy faces. This grand meeting was initiated by Yi Tianlin. When encountering such a thing, they naturally had to act according to Yi Tianlin's will. Yi Tianlin didn't expect that such a twist would happen in a grand meeting. His face instantly became gloomy and cold. "You're just a maidservant from the ancient desolation realm. It's understandable that you don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. As the host, we won't argue with you. If you want to fight with us, let your master come." Yi Tianlin's words immediately won the applause of the crowd. Bai Hen sneered and said, "The practitioners of the ancient desolation realm are still the same as before. You're obviously weak, but you're so stubborn." Speaking of this, she stopped smiling and glanced at the crowd with her green eyes like lightning. "I just want to ask one question. Who dares to fight with me?" He was overbearing. The experts in the field were all irritated and their faces darkened. "I'll do it." A burly man stood out with a powerful and intimidating aura. Clang! Without hesitation, Bai Hen drew out the blood sword on his back and slashed at him. He didn't say any nonsense at all. Whoosh! A blood-red sword chi suddenly appeared, tearing the air like a piece of cloth. It was dazzling like a blood-red lightning, cutting through the sky. With a puff, the burly man was sent flying. Although he tried his best to resist, his chest was still torn open. He smashed hard on a stone wall and screamed. Everyone in the field shrank their eyes and their hearts twitched. Lin Sun drank a cup of wine thoughtfully. This kind of swordsmanship was not only fast, but also extremely fierce and domineering. It was filled with the extremely pure longevity law. Although Bai Hen was a maidservant, she was also a top-notch swordsman in swordsmanship. Despicable. This is a sneak attack. Someone shouted. Holding the blood sword, Bai Hen said indifferently, "The real battlefield is only about life and death. I'm already merciful enough not to kill. Although this friend from the extraterritorial area is a little arrogant, he's a top-notch figure after all. Let me fight this battle." An elegant young man stood up, causing a commotion in the field. Everyone recognized that he was a top-notch figure, extremely famous, and a good friend of Yi Tianlin. The battle broke out as expected, but in just a moment, the winner was decided. The elegant young man's chest was pierced by a sword, and his body was sent flying. He fell to the ground and coughed up blood. His face was extremely pale, and there was a trace of disappointment between his brows. It seemed that he couldn't accept that he would be defeated by a maidservant like Bai Hen. This blow was undoubtedly too heavy. On the other hand, the expressions of everyone in the surroundings were unsightly to the extreme, and they revealed expressions of disbelief. The defeat of the refined young man was like a sledgehammer that smashed fiercely onto their hearts, and it caused them to suffer a blow. Even a maidservant is so terrifying. So exactly how formidable is Lang Qianheng? Moreover, if news of this were to spread that no one was able to subdue this maidservant, then all of them would definitely become the laughingstock of the world. It was an extreme humiliation. In a moment, all the losers must kneel obediently. If you don't admit that your skills are inferior, then I won't stop. Bai Hen spoke slowly. Her blood-red hair fluttered while the blood-red sword in her palm droned and emitted a clear howl. She seemed like a peerless female sword cultivator that was terrifyingly fierce. Her words were like salt that was poured onto a wound, and it caused the faces of everyone present to flush red while they felt indescribably furious, and they felt indescribably humiliated. "You're going too far," Senior Sister Gu spoke furiously. Slap! As soon as she finished speaking, her beautiful face was struck fiercely by a sword image, and it left behind a bloody injury. Bai Hen said indifferently, "Yes, I'm bullying you. What can you do about it?" This was extremely terrifying. Senior Sister Gu was in existence at the King Realm as well, yet she was actually unable to react before she was struck by someone. Damn it! Xia Wei's delicate body trembled with anger. Senior Sister Gu came from the same sect as her. Although they didn't have a good relationship, how could Xia Wei not be angry when she saw Bai Hen being humiliated? Bai Hen squinted at her and said, "Little sister, only a coward will be angry, and a brave man will draw his sword long ago. Since you spoke rudely to me, I should punish you." "Enough!" Yi Tianlin shouted with a gloomy face. But Bai Hen turned a deaf ear to him. When Yi Tianlin spoke, she had already taken action. Whoosh! A blood-red sword image swept out like a dazzling and enchanting whip, and it whipped towards Xia Wei's cheek. What was strong? That was it. A maidservant broke into this place alone, treated all the heroes as nothing, and started a fight at the slightest disagreement. However, when the sword swept out, Lin Sun shook his wrist, and the wine in the cup swept out like a ray of light rain, easily wiping out the sword. Wow, no wonder you dare to speak rudely to me. It turns out that there is a master sitting beside you. Bai Hen was a little surprised, but there was a trace of mockery in his voice. The others in the field also looked at him. Being able to block the blow of Bai Hen, it undoubtedly proved that the man beside Xia Wei should be extremely powerful. However, they were all confused because they didn't know Lin Sun and felt that he was very strange. Yi Tianlin vaguely felt that Lin Sun was a little familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen him. He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows in surprise. At this moment, Lin Sun put down the cup and patted Xia Wei on the shoulder, saying, "Thank you for your hospitality. In return, I will help you vent your anger before I leave." As he spoke, he had already stood up and looked at Bai Hen with an indifferent expression. He looked as calm as water without any ostentatious momentum. Vent others' anger? Bai Hen looked playful. "It seems that you are extremely confident in your strength. But aren't you worried about being beaten to death by me?" Lin Sun smiled. "I might as well give it a try." Bai Hen frowned. She couldn't see through the depth of the man in front of her, which made her feel that something was wrong. At this moment, all the people in the field also looked at Lin Sun. Especially Senior Sister Gu, who had seen Lin Sun before, didn't expect that he would stand up for Xia Wei at this time. Was he not afraid of death? "Taoism peer, let me do it." In the distance, Yi Tianlin spoke. He was the initiator of this event. Now that it had come to this, if he still didn't take action, he would seem too incompetent. "It's easy to die. Don't worry, it will be your turn later." Bai Hen's voice was leisurely. He raised the blood sword in his hand and pointed it directly at Lin Sun, full of provocation. "Now, let me play with you first." A terrible and fierce momentum suddenly spread out from Bai Hen, and the terrible bright Taoist light steamed around him, which made the wind and clouds in the sky pale. At this moment, everyone noticed that Bai Hen had used her real strength. It could be seen that in her eyes, Lin Sun was much more worthy of her attention than the others before. But at this moment, Lin Sun suddenly laughed. "Play? You're not qualified enough." As soon as his voice died away, he took a step forward. It was a very casual movement, without any momentum, just like a wanderer taking a leisurely stroll. But in Bai Hen's eyes, Lin Sun seemed to become another person. Chapter 1494. Boom! Like a thunderbolt, it exploded in Bijin's heart lake. In her field of vision, the man who took a step forward was like a great abyss, swallowing the starry sky, full of eternal majesty that could suppress all living beings. Compared with him, Bizhen felt like an ant that could only look up and crawl, unable to know his height. In an instant, Bijin's pretty face turned pale, and every inch of her muscles was stiff. A horrible breath rushed over her body like a cold current. Almost at the same time, Tianlin noticed something wrong at the first moment. He had planned to help Lin Sun immediately if he couldn't hold on. But he found that with this step, Bizhen seemed to have encountered great terror, and she was no longer strong, fierce, and proud as before. It was as if this one step had caused her to feel an unbearable pressure. "Child," Xiaowei opened her mouth but didn't say anything. She was also surprised and moved that Lin stood up for her, but she didn't want Lin to repeat the same mistake and be injured by the woman from the outer region. But at this moment, she was also keenly aware that something was wrong. After this step, Bizhen seemed to be possessed and didn't make a move. Immediately, other people in the field also noticed that something was wrong, and they were all surprised and doubtful. Bang! Then, under the horrified gaze of the crowd, Bizhen's straight body knelt on the ground. She prostrated herself on the ground, as if she was kneeling. The ground shook fiercely as she knelt down, and the rocks and plants trembled. One step, the woman from the outer region, who had ignored the crowd with fierce means, knelt on the ground. Such a scene was simply earth-shattering, which shocked all the people present. They stared with their eyes wide open, and even stopped breathing for a moment. They couldn't believe it. It should be known that this woman was not an ordinary person, but a female swordsman who had set foot on the ultimate path of cultivation. Her combat power was so strong that it made everyone in the field feel desperate. But now, Lin Sun took a casual step, and she knelt down. Looking at Lin Sun again, he was still as calm as before, and his expression was calm without any ripple, as if he thought all this was supposed to be like this. Many people swallowed their saliva, and their hearts trembled. They realized that the young man they had ignored was actually a terrifying existence. Tianlin was in a daze. He was also shocked by what he had just witnessed, and couldn't calm down. How could he expect that such a ruthless man like Lin Sun would show up at the party he hosted? Xiaowei covered her mouth. Her almond-shaped eyes widened. The first time she saw Lin Sun, she felt that he was extraordinary, but she didn't expect him to be so powerful. Senior Sister Gu was also stunned. When she first saw Lin Sun, she didn't take him seriously and even almost refused him to participate in this grand meeting. But because of Tianlin's arrival, she forgot about Lin Sun and didn't pay attention to him anymore. But at this moment, a feeling of regret suddenly gushed out from her heart. If she was able to be like Xiaowei earlier and give this person attention, then perhaps that sword image wouldn't have slapped on her face. "Who are you?" A cold and furious voice came from Baihen, who was kneeling on the ground, breaking the silence. "That's right. Who is this man?" Tianlin and the others were also curious. Do prisoners have the right to ask questions? Lin Sun looked down at her and said indifferently, but his words were like a sharp knife stabbing into Baihen's heart, making her feel extremely angry and humiliated. Since she came to the ancient desolation realm, she had never taken the practitioners of this realm seriously. She had a sense of superiority in her heart. But now, she was forced to kneel, and her dignity was trampled on. At this moment, Tianlin and the others had an indescribable sense of joy in their hearts. Baihen's arrogance and domineering made them angry. Now, they could finally vent their anger. "I'm not interested in bullying a maid like you. Go back and tell your master that if he's not satisfied, he can come to me. I can give him a chance to challenge me." As Lin Sun said, he withdrew his gaze, put his hands behind his back, and walked down the mountain. "Remember, my name is Lin Sun." Before his voice died away, he had already disappeared. And on a mountaintop, because of the two words Lin Sun, there was a complete uproar. Lin Sun, Demon Lin. For the practitioners of the entire ancient desolation realm, this name was like a legend, a living legend on the peerless path. Who didn't know? It's him. Tianlin was in trance. Just as he was about to ask Lin Sun to stay, he could no longer see Lin Sun. "So he's Demon Lin." Xiaowei's breathing became rapid, and her pretty face glowed. Only then did she realize that she had interacted with Demon Lin unknowingly. It was like a dream. Senior Sister Gu regretted it even more, and her heart was filled with mixed feelings. She had neglected and neglected Demon Lin. This made her so regretful that her intestines turned green. As for the others present, they only had one reaction. No wonder he could force his opponent to kneel in one move. Wasn't this normal for Demon Lin? Bai Hen, who was kneeling on the ground, was speechless. Her heart was shaken, and she even felt a sense of relief. Losing to Demon Lin didn't seem so shameful. On this day, the news of Demon Lin's appearance at the Thousand Flow Grand Gathering spread like wildfire, causing a sensation. After 2 years, that invincible legend has appeared once again. Many cultivators were excited. 2 years ago, Lin Sun returned to the mortal world, but to the cultivators of the ancient Desolation region, Lin Sun seemed to have disappeared without a trace. In the past 2 years, no one had heard any news about him, and because of this, it led to many speculations and discussions. Some said that Demon Lin had met with misfortune. He had offended too many ancient orthodoxies, and it was very likely that he had been killed without leaving a trace. Some said that Demon Lin was in seclusion to break through to the peerless saint realm. Of course, there were also people who suspected that he had left the ancient Desolation region and returned to his hometown. But no matter what, Demon Lin had appeared once again today. If he was just an ordinary cultivator, he naturally wouldn't have attracted much attention, but Lin Sun was different. Back then, he had dominated the peerless domain, ranked first on the Heavenly Sun's golden ranking, and defeated all his enemies. Back then, he had been besieged by many saints outside Snow Mulberry City, but he had slain all of them in a fit of rage, shocking and angering many ancient orthodoxies. But now he had returned. This kid has appeared again. On this day, countless ancient orthodoxies were alarmed, and even some old monsters couldn't help but pay attention to it. Because back then, Lin Sun had killed more than one saint. Our generation is no longer lonely. Some peerless figures, such as Imo, Mi Hongjin, Wang Xuanyu, and so on, sighed with emotion when they heard the news. Haha, I knew it. The Battle of the 9 Regions is coming, and Lin Sun definitely wouldn't miss it. Some people who were close to Lin Sun, such as Xiao Qinghe, laughing at the heavens, and Ye Chun, were happy about Lin Sun's strong return. The ancient Desolation region is going to be lively again. Every time Demon Lin appears, it's bound to cause a stir. During this period of time, those extraterrestrial enemies have descended and treated our ancient Desolation region as if there's no one there. But now, Demon Lin has stood firm, and he's destined to change everything. This time, Demon God Lin forced Lang, Xianheng's female servant, to kneel with a single step. He even said that he would give Lang Xianheng a chance to challenge him. I'm very curious. Will Lang Xianheng dare to challenge Demon God Lin when he finds out about this? Let's wait and see. On this day, countless discussions spread in different areas of the ancient Desolation region. The reason why the news spread so fast was related to Lin Sun's reputation and the Wind Whisperer clan. This clan controlled the message trees all over the world. When they learned of Lin Sun's appearance, they immediately spread the news to different areas with the leaves of the golden message tree. In this way, the news of Lin Sun's appearance could be known by cultivators in different places of the ancient Desolation region in less than a day. A few days later, Dongxing Territory, White Jade Capital. In front of the Soul Refining Tower on the first floor of the 12th floor, a young man in a golden robe stood. His bearing was like a dragon or a tiger, and he exuded a disdainful aura. His thick blood-red hair hung loosely down to his waist, and his facial features were sharp as if they were chiseled by a knife or axe. His pair of green eyes glowed with a strange luster. One step, and you'll be forced to kneel. The young man in a golden robe withdrew his gaze from the Soul Refining Tower and sighed with emotion. I didn't expect that there would be such a person in the ancient Desolation region, which has been cut off for countless years. Beside him, Bai Hen's face turned pale. She lowered her head and said, I'm useless. Without a doubt, this young man in a golden robe was Lang Qianheng, a peerless figure from the Blood Demon ancient realm. It was also him who threatened to challenge all the top figures in the ancient Desolation region. Recently, he had defeated all his enemies and never lost. He had caused an uproar in the ancient Desolation region, and many cultivators in the ancient Desolation region couldn't raise their heads. Useless? Haha. Although you're my maid, everyone in the Blood Demon ancient realm knows that you, Bai Hin, are extraordinarily talented. Lang Qianheng glanced at Bai Hin and said, "Otherwise, how could I choose you and keep you by my side to serve me?" Bai Hin felt bitter in her heart, but I was defeated in the end. I couldn't even block one step from him. I'm afraid it'll be difficult for me to avenge this humiliation in this life. She knew very well how big the gap between her and Lin Sun was. If you can't avenge it, I'll help you. A cold and frightening luster appeared between Lang Qianheng's eyebrows. You should look at the owner before beating a dog. You're my maid. Isn't a slap in my face if you're humiliated? Bai Hin was stunned and said, "Master, are you going to challenge Lin Sun?" Lang Qianheng said indifferently, "No, I want him to come to me and help me spread the news." 1 month later, in front of the Seoul Refining Tower in White Jade Capital, I, Lang Qianheng, will fight with him. Bai Hin was shocked and nodded in agreement.